All right, if everyone will take their seats, please. And good morning, everyone. Welcome to Tennessee Fish and Wildlife Commission meeting. This is our full commission day here on February the 18th, 2022. I want to welcome everybody here. We've got some special guests. I want to call out Scott Reese with UT Extension. Scott, thank you for being here. Ron Carrier. Ron. Brad Carrier. Hello, Brad. Bernie Cheatham from Obion. Bernie. Jerry Hatcher and Betty Hatcher. Are y'all, one's from Brentwood, one's from Franklin. So maybe, no, Spring Hill and Brentwood. Where's, all right. There. Okay, great. Let's see, Terry and Brian Goodwin. All right, welcome. Mark Hall. We'll see Mark. Maybe there he is. Okay. Vance Foreman. Mike Hayes from Obion County. Taylor Martin. Okay. And Kevin, is it Betts? Our colonel's so very, very good at law enforcement. Handwriting, not so much. Kevin Betts or Bots. All right, Kevin, we'll find you. Dawson Rader. Hey, Dawson. Clarence and Laura Dye are here, as always. Thank you all for being here. Anthony Ashley from Gallatin. Hello. Ricky Robertson from Indian Mound. Glad to have you with us. At this time, we're going to have our invocation and pledge of allegiance. I'm going to ask Commissioner Tommy Woods to lead us in our invocation.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this beautiful morning, Lord. We thank you for this time together that we can discuss the wildlife and beautiful scenery and the nature that you give us. And we just pray that the deliberations will be productive. And we thank you for all you do for us each and every day, Lord. For these things we pray in the name of Jesus.
Amen.
Pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Thank you very much. And I'm so happy to be able to ask Danette to call the roll.
Tommy Woods.
Here.
Angie Box. Here. Monty Ballou.
Here.
Stan Butt.
Here.
Wally Childress.
Here.
Bill Cox.
Here.
Chris Devaney. Jimmy Granberry.
Here.
Steve Jones. Brian McLaren.
Here.
Kent Woods. Hank Wright.
Here.
Jim Ripley.
Here.
Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Danette. Commissioners, you have minutes from the last meeting before you there. And I hope you've had an opportunity to review them. I'll entertain a motion for the approval of those minutes. I have a motion from Commissioner Granberry. Do I have a second? Second from Vice Chairman Angie Box. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All right, motion carries. Are there any announcements from any of the commissioners at this point in time? All right, seeing none, I'll recognize the director. Do you have any announcements or anything you need to say? Okay. All right. Well, we're going to start off with a presentation by David Hanni. Is that correct pronunciation?
Hanni works.
Hanni? Okay. If you would come to the podium, sir.
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to thank everyone for putting this important topic on the agenda. It's giving it a great award for the Robert M. Hatcher Ornithological Scholarship. So I'll talk a little bit about Robert Hatcher the scholarship, and then who the scholarship was awarded to. So Robert M. Hatcher worked for Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency for 38 years, including 23 years as the non-game and endangered species coordinator. During his career, he worked tirelessly to produce and protect and restore threatened and endangered species in Tennessee, most notably the bald eagle. This is a bird which is now flourishing in Tennessee, but that hasn't always been the case. Before the 1960s, it was basically extirpated from the state. And so through these tireless efforts, Bob Hatcher has brought the species back where we have over 200 nesting pairs in the state. Bob Hatcher was also instrumental in the establishment of the Bluebird license plate. I'm sure you all have seen that Bluebird license plate. And so Bob was the one who was really responsible for getting that established. And those profits go to the TWRA Watchable Wildlife Fund and program through an endowment. So the scholarship was developed to recognize Bob Hatcher's lifetime achievements in conservation. The scholarship is administered by the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Foundation, and it's given out once a year to a student within Tennessee that's attending upper division classes with a concentration in avian conservation or ornithology. So this year, in 2021, or last year, the award was given to Dawson Rader, who's here, and he's the winner of the 2021 Robert M. Hatcher Ornithological Scholarship. So if I can get a round of applause for Dawson. And so about Dawson realized early in his life that he was interested in wildlife biology. These thoughts and feelings were instilled in him through his relationship with his grandfather. Just after high school, Dawson immediately began seeking volunteer opportunities and became a volunteer for TWRA years ago. After this experience, he realized that he was interested in pursuing a career in avian conservation, and Dawson is now finishing up his senior year at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. Dawson is going to continue his education at the University of Tennessee, pursuing a master's degree. He has also worked, and in his free time, he doesn't have much, but he does volunteer at several banding stations in the state. There's a banding station at Whig Meadow, which is on the border of North Carolina and Tennessee, that he volunteers his time to go out and help band birds. He also helps volunteer at Sullivan Islands Birding Park, which is just located east of Tennessee. And Dawson has also been involved with work on several projects where we're focused on species of greatest conservation need in Tennessee. And so one of those projects is cerulean warbler work out at North Cumberland, which he's been working on for several years. He's conducted point counts for all bird species at Cherokee National Forest. And he's also worked at Kiker Bottoms WMA on some of the northern bobwhite projects that we have going in that area. And most recently, he's participated in the golden wing warbler work at North Cumberland, where we're trying to track this species along with other groups across the eastern United States. And the golden wing warbler is a state threatened species in Tennessee. So like I mentioned, after Dawson graduates, he'll be continuing his studies at University of Tennessee to pursue a master's degree. He's specifically going to focus on Swainson's warblers in the southern Appalachian Mountains and looking at their populations throughout that area. And some other noteworthy accomplishments that I'd like to mention about Dawson are he's the president of the UT Bird Club. This is a student chapter of the Tennessee Ornithological Society. He is the one that started this club in 2019 and has been and still is the president. He's also a member of the Knoxville chapter of the Tennessee Ornithological Society and a member of the University of Tennessee Wildlife and Fisheries Society. So without further ado, I mean, we are very proud to give this award to Dawson Rader.
Congratulations, Dawson. Thank you very much. Let's see, where's Scott Denton? Scott in the room? Oh, how are we on time on our special treat? Not yet. Okay. All right. At this point, I would like to recognize Colonel Darren Ryder with regard to the SEAFWA Wildlife Officer of the Year Award.
Thank you, Chairman Ripley, and thank you for the opportunity to recognize Sergeant Brad Bagwell for Tennessee's selection of SEAFWA's Officer of the Year. Sergeant Bagwell was hired into the agency in 2005 as a fisheries technician and hired on as a full-time boating officer in 2006 in Davidson County in District 21. He then transferred into Cheatham County position in 2016 and was promoted to District 21 Sergeant in 2017. Sergeant Bagwell's teamwork and public outreach. Brad is utilized in various situations all over District 21, especially in assisting boating enforcement on Percy Priest Reservoir because of his experience with Davidson County booking and experience on running boats on Percy Priest. He holds a yearly fishing event on Free Fishing Day in which he helps organize for over 100 youth. He also assists other officers in the district outside of his assigned county by helping with youth deer and turkey hunts in Cheatham and Montgomery counties. Sergeant Bagwell's excellence and innovation. Brad has been a part of one of the largest fireworks celebration in the nation in Nashville, Tennessee, and he's instrumental in organizing and creating a safety zone with buoys along the riverfront in downtown Nashville to keep the boating public safe as one of our largest fireworks display in the country. So, man, I participated in that event for like its first 26 years. And I know at the time I was probably the boating chief. And so they do the display. Then when it's over, it's kind of chaos because you got to get these boats out of the area. They're trying to go upstream. They're trying to go downstream. And I remember one evening I was working and I saw a boat going that was just totally black. So I engaged my spotlight, my blue lights, and the operator was he was driving like this, never acknowledged. I was bumper to bumper, boat to boat. And I thought, this ain't good. So I said, man, I know a guy. So I said, car 70 to 2171. So I got one over here you might want to check. I looked up and all I saw was Brad leap from his patrol boat into that other boat, and he took care of it. So that's the kind of guy he is. And then also this past year, you remember that, Brad? This past year, while working on Percy Priest Reservoir, Sergeant Bagwell took control of a situation where an individual had drowned, and he had to direct other officers to do CPR. He had to get boats to the ramp. He had to direct traffic at a chaotic scene again until the medics arrived and the drowning victim was transported to a hospital. He assisted in another unique situation in June of 2021 on Percy Priest Reservoir again, where the 7 passengers had a plane crash there on the lake. And the crash scene was very unique and something that we were never exposed to as officers. But Sergeant Bagwell stayed there every day to assist all the other agencies in recovering bodies and also plane parts from the wreckage. Brad Bagwell's attitude and leadership. He assists in training newly hired officers during their field training program. Brad is looked to as a lead on search warrants due to his knowledge and experience on executing them. He assisted with serving 3 this year that dealt with turkeys and deer being transported across state lines. I promise you, in my age, if he's on a search warrant, I'll be right. Come on, Brad. He's first one through, but I'll be right behind you. So that's kind of our mindset. Brad, you're the first one through.
Leading from behind.
So Sergeant Bagwell's achievements and accomplishment. Brad was involved in several high-profile cases this year. He checked a total of 1,128 individuals for compliance that resulted in 98 citations, 10 warnings, 5 BUI arrests, and 6 BUI assist arrests. He made over 600 positive public contacts with school groups, sportsman groups, civic groups, and personal contacts. He assists our special investigation unit with the search warrants on 3 large cases in Montgomery, Rutherford, and Stewart County that resulted in numerous citations and 2 arrests. Brad being selected as the Tennessee's SEAFWA Officer of the Year, that's for Southeastern Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies, in case y'all didn't know. He attended the conference this past fall in Roanoke, Virginia, where he was recognized at that conference for this year's efforts. Also to be noted that Brad is one of the few, either one or two, I have to figure that out, but he was also selected as Tennessee's Boating Officer of the Year back in 2015, roughly. So he serves that unique title too. So Sergeant, I do want to recognize his supervision. So thanks to his major, Mitch Bailey at the time, but he's now retired. And y'all met Jeff. He's the new major since Mitch's retirement. His lieutenant was Jim Hooper, who has also retired. His captain at the time was Dale Grandstaff, but he's now the new lieutenant colonel for the division. So thanks y'all for your supervision and for Brad. So Brad, you're to be commended for your service, not only to Tennessee's hunters, anglers, and boaters, but also to community. Congratulations.
It's not going up.
Get Amy in there.
All right, I got a special treat this morning, and I'm going to introduce Vice Chairman Angie Box to make a little presentation to a special guest who's joining us by audio, video. What do we? Oh, there he is. Welcome, sir. How are you?
Hello, everybody.
Good morning, Angie.
Good morning.
Sure. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How about y'all?
We're good. You got your bags packed?
I've got them packed, Angie.
Okay.
Fixing to head south.
All right. I know. That's great. Well,
Get
we
out of
have
this cold weather.
yeah, we need to all go with you.
Come on. You're welcome.
Okay. We have a little surprise for you. So I'm going to read something and then we'll tell you what it is. Okay.
Okay. Thank
Can you hear me
dear.
okay?
I can hear you great.
Okay. All right. At an earlier meeting, Tennessee Fish and Wildlife Commissioner Tony Sanders proposed the Legacy Award. The purpose of this award is to recognize someone of an organization that demonstrates a level of commitment to any of the aspects of what TWRA and TWC oversee. There will be no set criteria other than must be under purview of Tennessee Wildlife Commission. It is expected that the person of the organization nominated by the commissioners would have demonstrated a level of commitment of the hunting and fishing and outdoor lifestyle of Tennessee. There are many people and organizations that give so much to help the outdoors. And we would like to award you with the Legacy Award. And do you know a man named Commissioner Bill Cox?
The what?
Do you know Commissioner Bill Cox?
I've heard of it. Yes.
Well,
Yeah,
he
he's
is
one of my dearest
nominated.
friends.
He's nominated you for this very special Legacy Award, and we'd like to present that to you today.
Well, thank you so much, Bill Cox. Thank you so much for that, the Legacy Award. And I thank the commission too. You know, I want to spend just a second and thank the commission for the great job that y'all have done in supporting us on the Tennessee Trail and giving us the backing that you have and giving us the support you have. I know our team, Troy Goldsby, along with Frank Fish and Jason Hennegard, have been working this past week, putting together some great ideas. So our idea with the trail is coming along real well with the park lakes that really need a Band-Aid put on them. So with their support and the ideas that they have in mind, we're off and running. So I think within the next year or two, you're going to see some major improvements. But again, I want to thank each one of you commissioners for all your support. And Bill, I appreciate the Legacy Award. You nominated me for this particular award. And Angie, thank you. And all you commissioners for everything you do. It's just, it's a wonderful thing. There you go.
Bill,
Thank you, Bill.
wanted to say that you are truly a Tennessee treasure. And
Thank you.
always wear that Tennessee hat. Watched you on TV many days, been inspired by it. I can't imagine a more worthy recipient of this award. And we do have actual hardware for you here. I don't know where it is, but we'll see that you get it soon. Okay.
Well, thank you so much. I know, Angie, you got a birthday coming up here. I think about the 4th or 5th of March. I wish I could be there with you, and I'd give anything in the world to be there, but I'm tied up so bad I can't be there. But I'm wishing you an early birthday wish.
Well, thank you so
happy
much.
birthday.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be your friend, and I
Thank
just
you.
appreciate everything you've done for Tennessee and for us. So
Let's all stand and
Thank all of y'all
acknowledge
for
our
everything
dear
you do
friend Bill
for us. We
Dance.
certainly do appreciate it. Thank y'all. Thank you very much.
You know, everybody sees what Bill does in the public, and he's lending his reputation and his name to the new trail, but not many people see what he does behind the scenes, shares his time, donates fishing trips for people that obviously outbid somebody else to get them, but then he donates fishing trips for children and organizations that have what's the name of the child's Make-A-Wish that he does every year. He gives so much of his time. I can't tell you how many thousands of bass he's moved from one lake to another to help somebody stock their lake and get started fishing, and showing up at fishing rodeos and taking time with every child around the lake and talking to them and helping them cast and do that kind of thing. So it's not just the high profile things. It's the things that Bill does when nobody's looking that make him such a hero to me. And I appreciate it very much. Well deserved.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you very much.
I'd like to say something too, Mr. Dance. This is Bobby
Thank you.
Wilson. You might not be able to see me, but he also has volunteered a lot of his staff time to promoting things for TWA, not just on the show, but he did a video on invasive species of the Asian carp. He's done some work promoting our smallmouth bass license plate. And I can't tell you all the other ones he's promoted, but he's been a valuable friend and ally to us throughout the years.
Thank you, Bobby. I can see you. Bobby, you're a great buddy and a great friend. Our friendship goes back, oh my goodness. Woo, how long, Bobby? 30, 35 years, I guess. And I certainly do appreciate your friendship, your support, and everything you've done for TWRA and everything you've done for Bill Dance and Bill Dance Outdoors, for all these years. So you're a great guy and a credit to TWRA.
Indeed.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you so much, Bill.
Not me.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I can't thank you and thank all of you.
You can go fishing now.
Hey, thank you. Thank you so much.
All
Thanks
right.
again for this wonderful award, this legacy award. I'll have a special place for it. Thank y'all. Thank you, thank you, thank you so,
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank y'all.
All right. I'm going to recognize Jamie Feddersen. Jamie is going to talk to us about Proclamation 22-01, the Migratory Gamebird Hunting 2022-2023 season.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Commissioners. For your consideration, we're bringing Proclamation 22-01, the 2022-23 Migratory Gamebird Hunting Seasons and Regulations. Yesterday, the agency presented recommendations to the Wildlife Committee, and there were some amendments that were offered, and so I'd like to show you it's not advancing, Terry. If you just go one, thank you. Mm-hmm.
You know, while they're getting that, it occurred to me, Bobby, that we were supposed to go quail hunting one morning, and you blew me off to go fishing with Bill Dance. It's okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, what you see is from what we had originally previewed in January and what we presented to the Wildlife Committee yesterday is a modification that just basically it removes the early reel foot, the 2 early reel foot duck hunting days and collapses them into the statewide season. So these are the changes that would be reflected in the new proclamation.
All right. Thank you, Jamie. Do you have a motion or?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, the Wildlife Committee voted unanimously to approve the proclamation as amended.
All right. I'm going to take that as a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second. Before we get into commission discussion, I'll recognize anybody from the public who wants to comment on this proclamation. Is there anybody who wants to comment on this proclamation? All right, hearing none, I open for discussion of the commission. Any discussion? Hearing none, we have a motion. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, it carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
What'd you say? I'm sorry.
Did y'all know it looks like that the 5th of December is on a Monday? Yeah, we knew that.
Come up to the microphone if you don't mind, sir. And could you tell us your
My name's Ron Carrier,
and where are you from, Ron?
Dixon,
Okay.
and it said December 5th. Normally it opens the weekend after Thanksgiving. It's down a week and then opens up the next Saturday. You're open December 5th of 2022. From my calendar says that's a Monday. Are you going to open it on a Monday?
Yeah.
Yes, sir, Mr. Carrier. We combined the reel foot, so that was the first 2 days of the season, the duck season, 60 days. So we went to January 31st to the overwhelming support for ending on the 31st day of January, then backed up 50 days, and that landed on 58 days, landed on the 5th, as you know, which is a Monday. We were very well aware of that, but it was ending on 31st was more important to the start.
And the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Framework will only let you have so many splits. So we can only have 2 opening days like that. So if you want to hunt to January 31st, we have to back it up and start on a Monday. So we're following federal framework 1 and then 2 to be able to hunt to the January 31st like everybody does. You have to start on a Monday for your second opening day.
Well, like this year, we didn't hunt but to January 30th. The 31st
Correct.
was on a Monday, so you backed it up
Correct.
to that.
Mhm.
Okay,
But everybody's wanting to hunt till the 31st from our input that we've gotten.
okay.
And it's going to be more than one day next year. It's going to be how many days? 2 or 3 days, isn't it? If we back it up and start on a weekend, we'll miss 3 days there at the end.
You've been close to.
All right, so, and with it being an opening split, like where I hunt at Cheatham and Monday is an off day, you're able to hunt that one day Monday, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay,
Yes, I believe normally we have, in our WMA proclamations, we have some provisions for opening day. Whether it's a closed day, normally we usually have it open on opening days and close.
You won't have an opening day. The WMA be closed.
okay.
All right. Any more comments? The proclamation's already been voted on and has carried. Let's move on to our rulemaking hearing. And order of events here, we're going to open this rulemaking hearing, and as we did just a moment ago, we'll have a motion and a second. And then I'm going to open it up for public discussion. Before I do that, I want to recognize Commissioner Hank Wright, who's got some things that he wishes to say.
Thank you, Chairman Ripley. Just want to address everyone in the room. We're really grateful that each and every one of you are here. We always want your input. We like your input from phone and email, but we're grateful for the public. We're grateful for this resource, this creative resource. And that's my second point would be that we all care about the same things. Everybody in the agency, everybody on the commission, and the public duck hunters, we all care about the same thing. So if we keep that in mind, I think that constructive input yields a better product. So we're all ears. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner. Good points. We will be civil in here, and we will observe what Commissioner Wright just suggested. So this is a rulemaking hearing before the Tennessee Fish and Wildlife Commission to consider amending the following rules: Chapter 1660-01-02-.02, dealing with rules and regulations governing migratory bird hunting, and 1660-01-08-.05, dealing with rules and regulations governing hunts, permit applications, and drawings. My name is Jim Ripley, and I will conduct the hearing. The order of proceedings will be as follows. The Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency staff will present information on the proposed rules. Commission members will be permitted to comment and ask questions. Members of the audience will be permitted to comment and ask questions. Staff members and members of the audience wishing to speak should identify themselves before speaking and come to the microphone for those in the public. I reserve the right to limit comments and discussions, especially in cases of repetition. All right. So at this point, I will recognize, is it Chris that's going to present this? Joe Benedict. All right, Joe, you're up.
Good morning, Commissioners. It's great to be here. Sorry, that's a hot mic. What I have for you today is a preliminary preview of the duck hunter surveys. And I want to start by thanking the folks that have participated in our numerous surveys this year. Some of the surveys were at the request of the commission. I want to thank you guys for asking us to do that work. There's a lot of information, a lot of slides that we're going to share. They're all preliminary information. We got most of this information last Friday, so our staff have been working hard to gather that information. Next thing we'll do is share the agency recommendations around both of these rules. And then, of course, I will share the actual rule, the summary of the rules broken down by 02 and 08. So again, just want to remind you that we received this data Saturday, some on Friday, some on Saturday. very preliminary results. We did 3 formal surveys. We had a mandatory survey for Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 permit holders that was required as part of their receiving that permit. We also did a Creel survey, and we've heard from Frank Fiss previously about their Creel surveys. Basically, this is a survey in the field where they go up to anglers, and in our case would be hunters hunting in a duck blind, and just have a conversation with those. It's a very short survey. We ask standard questions. What we did here is we did random days throughout the week and weekend. And then finally, the duck hunter feedback survey, which is what we're calling the survey that Commissioner Blue requested at the last meeting. This was a survey of all applicants. We sent out emails to 220,720 folks and asked their opinions on some things. So I wanted to start, kind of go back in time a little bit. This has been a 2+ year project that the agency and commission have worked on together. This slide is nearly verbatim from the June 2019 commission meeting. In there, we outlined the fact that there's been longstanding requests for more public hunting opportunity in Tennessee. We have lots of WMA acres. Many of them are not wet. They're not waterfowl areas. And so we have a limited number of places that folks can duck hunt on public property. We have complaints about it's one day and I can't miss it. I can't miss work that day. I can only apply to one WMA. So all of these factors kind of lay the groundwork for the project, if you will, that we've developed over the last couple of years. The commission asked us a couple of things there at the bottom to evaluate the handheld drawing process for consistency. They asked us to identify ways to reduce the illegal sale of these blinds, and there's a rule pertaining to that. And then finally at the bottom, this is a new piece that wasn't shared in 2019, but it was something that was stated by the commission. They want to ensure a fair process for all sportsmen and women of Tennessee. So those were kind of the beginning phases of this. When we developed the program, we wanted to increase opportunity for duck hunters statewide, right? We wanted to increase the number of individuals that hunt on our public lands each year. And that's a key point. We'll come back to another slide articulating that maybe a little differently than we have in the past. We also wanted to make sure that we accommodated local and long distance hunters, folks that were far away from a handheld draw perhaps. We wanted to accommodate those unable to attend a handheld drawing, military folks on leave, non-local folks, shift workers, UPS folks that can't get off a certain day. Allow for a selection of multiple WMAs. That was a request that we had received. We also want to recognize the various benefits of waterfowl hunting to the communities. We know the handheld draws drew a crowd. They raised money for different social charities and things like that. There's also benefit when the hunters come to those communities. We want to make sure we recognize those benefits in this program that we were developing. And finally, the last bullet there, we want to make sure to the best of our ability that the program around public land duck hunting is similar to other public hunting opportunities like deer and turkey, which we also issue quota permits for. So here's a slide. It may be the most important slide here. It may not be. One of the things that we've seen and heard from some of our public input is kind of a disconnect or maybe a lack of understanding of what we intended when we said increasing hunter opportunity. You see the equation up there, if you will, at the top. What we define as opportunity, we've shared this a number of times with the commission at commission meetings and the public. What we mean is that the number of individuals with a permit to hunt a WMA during a season. We weren't talking about the number of people that are actually hunting because we can't regulate that, right? I've gotten a permit last year for deer hunting at Cheatham. I got another permit for AEDC because they had leftovers. So I could only hunt one of those. I chose not to hunt the other one for various amounts of reasons. So again, the opportunity, when we say opportunity, when the agency says that around duck blinds, it's about the number of individual people that can hunt, that have a permit to hunt on those areas. Just a quick number, a number here at the bottom. There's a lot of complex tables that we've shown you in the past around the opportunity. Again, as we describe it as a number of individuals. Before 2021, if you look at that first number, 1,680, if every person that applied for a duck blind in 2020 applied as a party of one, we would issue one permit to each of those, and that number was 1,680. So 1,680 individuals is the minimum number we would issue if one person and only one person applied for that blind. In 2021, too, which is this past year, the minimum number was 2,238. So that's an increase of 559 more permits that we've given. So that right there is, if you look at our definition of opportunity, that's the increase that we've had. Again, you could the numbers on the right are if you had 8 people apply as a party, we would issue 8 permits for every site. And that number goes from 9,876 to 17,912. So we don't want to talk about the extreme numbers. We wanted to leave you with the minimum number. Again, 559 more permits were issued this year, assuming a applicant party size of 1. So we have met that goal of increased opportunity, which is, again, permits to hunt that property. Also wanted to remind you of the 2019 Duck Hunter Survey. This was a random survey. We wanted to get some broader outreach from Tennessee duck hunters, not the general public, but Tennessee duck hunters, folks that we know had a license and they were licensed to hunt. We partnered with the University of Tennessee. You all have seen the report. We've made that report available publicly. And again, this was a random survey of duck hunters. And we reached a representative sample of duck hunters. And so there's a lot of theory that goes into sampling design and random surveys. Again, we had a professional at UT develop this. They're distant from us. They don't have any sort of dog in the fight or duck in the fight, if you will. We sent them by mail and email. And at the end of the day, the research scientists indicated that we did have a sufficient return or sample size of respondents to make statewide inferences, which is what the program is. It's a statewide public waterfowl hunting program. In that survey, just the top 4 sort of constraints to duck hunters: lack of access or opportunity was a number 1 complaint or concern or desire of duck hunters. Again, these are hunters that have licenses to duck hunt in Tennessee. Crowded hunting areas was number 2, low odds for getting a season-long blind or a quota permit. So those are the top 4 constraints to duck hunters as reported in the 2019 survey. Here's a big list of the top 10 factors for duck hunting. I won't read through all of them. I'll pause and just wait for a minute for you to look through that. Again, this is a slide that you've all seen before. Number 1, not competing with illegal blind purchasing. There's a lot of details about how they want to hunt. Close to my area, multiple WMAs a year. I want to before the duck hunting season this year. So buckle your seatbelts. We're about to get into the preliminary responses for all the surveys we've done. You'll see, I'll go through the slides here in a minute and kind of orient you. There's a bunch of pie charts, a few tables. One of the things that I've done is in the title slides, I want to just kind of create a break for you. So this first series of slides is around the tier 1 or the season-long duck hunting blinds, those permits that we issue for a full 60-day season. And again, these, just a reminder, these are preliminary responses from the folks that return those surveys. Again, this is required. This is one of the mandatory surveys. If you got a permit, you were required to fill the survey out. We issued about 1,100 permits. Here's a caveat, and this is one of the reasons why these numbers in particular are very, very preliminary. We issued 1,100 permits. We've only received 197, and that's because the due date on these surveys was 10 days after the end of your hunt. Well, a season-long permit holder has that blind for the 60-day regular duck season, the youth hunts, and the military and the veteran and active military hunts. So that hunt was last Sunday. So they have until February 23rd. We will get a lot more survey responses from our tier 1 folks. It'll change the numbers, obviously. It may or may not change the percentages. You guys know how that works. So again, we've got 912 folks that haven't yet reported. It's not due for another couple of days. We send a number of email reminders to them about the survey, and we'll send a few more here again before the 23rd. So let me orient you to these slides. So you've got a pie chart with colors. Up above is the yes or no, or the category we're trying to represent. We use the same title slide. So permit use and occupancy, you'll see that for tier 1s, tier 2s, et cetera. On the far right, you'll notice it says tier 1. So I wanted to just point that out because there's a lot of slides and you may get confused about which tier we're talking about. So starting off with this slide, percent use and occupancy. One of the questions we had is, are people hunting out there, right? I see vacant blinds. We get calls, hey, there's nobody hunting in this blind. We all know that we've got sick. I mean, think about COVID. People have missed work suddenly. There's all kinds of factors in the world that relate to our ability to go hunting or even go to work sometimes. So we asked this question about occupancy. So 83% of the tier 1 respondents to date, again, only 197, they said, yes, they've hunted. If you look at the table on the right, this is kind of interesting. And I highlighted those numbers just to kind of show you where the bulk of the responses were. Again, 197 folks. That most of the folks that responded to our surveys that hunted a tier 1 blind, that had a tier 1 blind permit, hunted 29 days or less. There was a few folks that hunted 30, 40, 50, and 2 folks so far that hunted all of the 60 days. So that's just kind of a little insight for us that 29 days is kind of the average, I guess, or it's not an average number of folks that hunted most. So the next, again, continuing on with permit use and occupancy, why did you not hunt? We asked folks why they didn't hunt, right? We just want to know a little bit more about the reasonings that folks don't show up in the blinds. Fewer ducks expected or reported in the area. I'm guilty of that. Duck hunting's not good. Somebody invites me, I've got other things I need to do. I should be doing instead of that. Personal choice not to hunt. We just left it generic like that. And 18 folks said that. The weather was too warm and there were a few ducks in the area. And then there was other category so folks could type in things, and there were 19 other reasons that we didn't list in that list. So did you apply as a group? So 84% of the folks that completed the survey applied as a group. We also asked a question again, this is tier ones. We also asked the question, how many folks did you cycle through your blind, might be the way to say that, during the course of the 60-day season? And of the respondents, 129 cycled through one to 9 hunters. So those could be different. They're obviously different individuals. So essentially 9 hunters hunted in 129 of those blinds maximum. And it goes down. You see that we did have somebody reported 60 people had hunted with them throughout the season. That's 60 different individuals going to that blind that they had a permit for. That's a very high number. It's great. And hopefully a lot of those were new hunters or kids. Satisfaction. What's the overall satisfaction of your tier 1 hunting opportunity? You look at 41% were satisfied and 16% were very satisfied. So you've got 57% that were satisfied or very satisfied. That's a pretty good number for a public hunting opportunity. Some comments, what factors contributed to your satisfaction? Now, so these are the comments that folks made. So again, these are tier 1 blinds. Somebody stole my decoys. Somebody moved my decoys. Most of these folks leave their decoys out year round or season long. They trashed our blinds when we weren't there. It was a great first time experience. I finally got a blind. Some hunters could be more respectful. So you'll see there's back and forth. There's good and there's bad about the tier 1 blinds for the folks that responded to the survey and hunted this year. Are you going to apply for tier 1 next year? Majority said yes. Okay, we asked a few economic questions. This is something that, again, I mentioned earlier in the presentation that we want to learn more about hunting trip expenditures by folks. So we've got these numbers for the quota hunts, which are the short-term hunts, and then the tier 1 hunts. And so you can see that $360,000, just shy of that, was spent around duck hunting, whether it's blind construction. We know that lumber prices are way up this year. Hunting supplies, $160,000. Again, this is only 157 folks so far, and then gas and hotels and food. So the average per hunter was about $2,000, almost $2,200. Again, these are tier 1 folks that have a season-long blind. And these are preliminary numbers again. Just want to keep saying that. So for some of these, this quota hunts is in quotes because what we did here is we combined the tier 1s, which are 3-day and 4-day hunts. We combined the tier 3s, which are a 7-day hunt. And then we combine the pool hunt areas. So the Pagoda pools, the Thorny Cypress pools, the Chickamauga pools. We put all those together. We're calling them quota hunts, but they're in quotes just so you guys know what that means. Again, this survey was a mandatory survey. We issued about 3,800 permits. These responses were due February 10th. So that was last Thursday. So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we were working with Brant, our data folks, to begin to work on how to get those data to us so we could begin to analyze it, work on these slides, these pie graphs, et cetera. Some results came in Friday, some came in Saturday. So we've had a short time. These are still very preliminary. We've got 1,200 folks that did not respond yet, and that deadline is passed. So this is all the data we'll have. We'll talk about some other factors here as we move along. Again, we sent reminders to these folks that their survey was due. This seemed like the best place to put this. I know we had a question about, did you use a guide? The commission suggested we made some extra efforts to contact guides. We put them on our website. If folks that were new to these quota hunt areas wanted to use a guide, we just kind of connect them. No representation of the guide service or not. We did that for them. We did have 3 folks that told us that they used a guide. So is this your first time applying for public land? 79% said, no, I've been applying for duck hunts on public land before. So we had, the other way to look at this is we had 21% of new folks that hadn't duck hunted on public land before. So this meets part of our objective of increasing opportunity for hunters. We have this recruitment, retention, and reactivation of hunters efforts. Jennifer Wisniewski is leading that. A lot of states across the country are. This indicates that we've made a little ground there. We've had new hunters on our public property. Again, we're going to go back to these slides. Permit use and occupancy. These are the same slides you've seen before. These are for the quota hunt. So did you hunt during your permitted hunt? 65% of the folks said yes. How many days did you hunt? This is where it spreads it out. So let me just remind folks, some of the pool areas, I think Thorny Cypress and Pagoda have a one-day hunt, which is a Tuesday only. So if you get that permit, you're only allowed to hunt one day. Some of the other hunts are Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So that's a 3-day quota. The other ones are Monday through Thursday. And then the tier 3s are 7-day hunts. So all of these numbers, some of them are the maximum number of days that a person could hunt. So some of those folks, that's the maximum they could. Anyway, we just wanted to show you the number of days hunted. It's kind of all over the board, but 39% hunted 2 days during their permit. Again, all these are preliminary data. So, why didn't you hunt all the days that you could? Again, unexpected personal conflict, few ducks, work conflict, weather too warm, too cold, kind of the things that we've heard about that we've all done. We're all guilty of those same things as hunters. Satisfaction, overall, how satisfied are you with these short-term hunts, whether it's 1 day, 3-day, 4-day, or 7-day? And if you look at the, let's see here, the yellow and the purple, you've got 33 and 17% that were satisfied or very satisfied. Again, you're getting to close to 50% there that were satisfied. And then you've got 24% that were kind of apathetic or they didn't really have a strong opinion there. I'm going to let you folks read this while I take a sip. Again, the same as previously. These are quota hunts, short hunts. What are the factors that contribute to the satisfaction? Same thing we've seen in the previous ones. There's a new one here, ability to hunt a WMA have not hunted in a long time or hunted previously. That's kind of a new one there. Quality of hunt location, quality of habitat, etc. Are you satisfied with the application process? This was a computer draw. We've had computer draw for a number of years for Pagoda and Thorny Cypress. Most folks were satisfied or very satisfied with this. Again, around 50% without doing the math. The comments about the satisfaction with the quota hunts. This is overall satisfaction of the tier 3 hunts. Again, I'll just let you read those. Online process, apply for more than one WMA, etc. There was 444 other comments. So we've not yet had a chance to go through those comments. It's just, we've got, I think, 4,000 lines of data to go through, and it's just written in various forms. So again, these are just the top factors that we were able to share. Here's a question I know the commission and members of the public are interested in. These are for the quota hunts. So the short-term hunts, what's your preference about hopping or not hopping? 62% say they want to allow hopping. This is in the mandatory survey that we sent out. Economics summary, again, of the short-term hunts. You'll see that the number here is $507,000. It's, $60 or so thousand more than the tier ones. The average amount per hunter spent was lower, $320. But there's more of those hunters that cycle through those communities. And so you see the footnote at the bottom, about 42% of these expenditures occurred in the county of the WMA. So some of these expenditures, and I could see hunting supplies and equipment. If you're buying decoys, you might buy them in the summer where you live. And so therefore you're not spending those funds in the county of residence. That's a question that we asked respondents to estimate the approximate percentage they spent in the county of the WMA. And again, these numbers are for tier 2, 3, and the pool permits all combined. How satisfied are you with the tier 2 blind, the blind itself? Again, we look at around 50% or more that we're satisfied with the blind. And we know that there's work to do on that. there's some drafty places. There's some things that we'd like to fix. Some of our WMA staff individually went and put a lot of work into those blinds. We've got some additional work to do this year. We're working with a contractor to adjust some things from their side to help with some of these issues that we've known about since construction. Satisfaction comments. These are specific to the Tier 2 blinds. One thing I failed to mention earlier, these satisfaction comments, let's look at the first one, size and construction of the blind. There was 148 people that selected that. One thing we did not have time to do is go back and divide each of these respondents into, are they satisfied or not satisfied? If I'm satisfied overall with the Tier 2 blinds, and I check the box here that says size and construction of the blind, it means I like the size, I like the construction. If I'm dissatisfied with the blind, I can check the same box and I could be dissatisfied with the size or construction. So again, we've not had time to do that. So these, we just need to take these with a grain of salt. Not all of these are positive comments. Also, not all of these are negative comments. I hope that made sense. Are you going to apply for Tier 2 in the future? 50% said very likely, 22% more. So we're at 75% or so, the folks that are going to apply for Tier 2s again. We saw some videos that Jennifer took in the blinds, and I believe all those folks were really happy with the blind and excited. So, that was a small sample size. This is a much larger one, 2,629 people. Tier 3 sites, again, these are 7-day permits, and it's a spot. So you bring a boat in, or you stand by a tree, or you build a little makeshift blind. So again, you've got about 75% of the folks here that were either neither satisfied or dissatisfied, or very or somewhat satisfied. And the same thing here with comments. If you look at number 2, these are factors that contribute to their satisfaction. If they were not satisfied, and you look at bullet number 2, with natural vegetation to hide, it meant there was not enough vegetation to hide. If there's good vegetation to hide and they were satisfied there was enough vegetation there. So again, we've not had time to tease these out. Really, this should be 2 slides. One that says satisfied hunters, and these are the factors contributing to their satisfaction. One says dissatisfied hunters, and these are why they're dissatisfied. So we'll continue to look through that as we go through the next couple of months with our staff and make some adjustments, any adjustments that we can around these locations. You can apply for Tier 3 in the future. Looks like a lot of folks are going to apply for Tier 3 in the future. Moving on to the Creel surveys. These are the Tier 2. These are the field sites, kind of the field checks, if you will, where our staff went on random days, weekends, and weekdays, spread throughout the season. Just visited with the hunters in the blind. How's your hunt going? Can we talk to you for a few minutes? We asked them a series of standard questions, 3 or 4. We also checked to see if the Tier 1 blind nearby, provided there was one, was occupied. It was a way for us to determine, if it's frozen and there were no hunters in the Tier 2 blind, there probably wasn't going to be hunters in the Tier 1 blind. So we just wanted to check and see if there was difference in occupancy rates, if you will, between the Tier 2 blinds and the Tier 1 blinds. That was a complaint and concern, again, that we hear throughout the course of the seasons. We did an average of 5 site visits for every Tier 2 blind throughout the season. So were blinds occupied? We either talked to the hunters or we saw the decoys. And so the number, let's see, 50% were occupied, and an additional 11% had decoys out. So if you think about a Tier 2 blind, you may have a 3-day hunt. If I take my son out and we hunt in the morning, we shoot our limit, and it's just the 2 of us, and it's 8 o'clock, I'm going to go home, but I'm going to leave my decoys out. So it was a way for us to indicate that somebody was hunting that blind during that hunt period. The other point I failed to mention earlier is when our staff set out to do these Creel surveys, we tried to get to the blind around 10 o'clock. We didn't want to disturb that early morning hunt. So it's possible, again, that if I left at 8 o'clock, my decoys would be there. So again, this is looking at about 60% occupancy of these blinds on the days that we checked. Was the adjacent Tier 1 blind occupied? This is interesting. 60% of the blinds were not occupied. And so we've got 39% of the Tier 2 blinds that were not occupied, but 60% of the Tier 1s. So again, don't really have any indication beyond that. These are just preliminary numbers, but more folks, another way to look at this was on the days that we surveyed, on the days that there was a tier 1 blind adjacent to the tier 2, when our staff looked, the tier 1 blinds were vacant more often than the tier 2s. That's kind of a surprising result based on what the public comment was. So how was your hunt on the left side? Good, fair, poor, excellent. It looks like about 80% had fair, good, or excellent, which was good. Did you like the blind? Again, 60% said yes. 32% said yes if you modify them. Again, we have ideas, our staff, we knew there were some modifications that we needed to make. There was a struggle with getting equipment and getting materials and building those blinds. These blinds will be better next year with the modifications we plan. And only 5% didn't like the blind. That's a little surprising to me that it's that high, but that's the number. Satisfaction of tier 2 by the Creel. Again, did you like the draw process? 70% said yes. They like to apply it on a computer for multiple WMAs, all those different factors. Have you ever been drawn before? And it was a 50-50 split, 49-51, actually. So these folks have been drawn for blind before. So again, we've had, about half the number of permits were issued to new folks that hadn't ever hunted in a blind like that. How many days do you normally hunt? This is another question and piece of information that we've heard. Over 10 days, people normally hunt. 80% of the folks we surveyed said they hunt more than 10 days in a season. Well, that's good. These are dedicated waterfowl hunters with the opportunity to go. Do you prefer tier 2 blinds be hoppable? Remember, these are hunters that are in the blind that our staff are visiting. And so 42% said yes, 38% said no, which is kind of split even. And then you've got 20% that said both. And I had to ask my staff to make sure I understood what this both meant. So if we went up to a blind and there were 2 people in it, and we asked that question, and one of the folks said, yes, I want it hoppable, and the other one said no, they would be in that both category. So you could either split that in half or add 20% each, or just maybe ignore it because it's some of each. So again, it's kind of split of those folks in the blind who wanted to have these blinds hoppable or who didn't. So duck hunter feedback. This is the Monty Ballou survey, we'll call that, with our friend Commissioner Ballou, who asked us to survey. It was a good suggestion to survey everyone that applied, because that would indicate, number one, licenses and interest in the quota hunts. This was done by our agency. We use a Qualtrics software, which is what professional human dimension and social scientists use. Survey was open for 10 days. Again, we just received those data last Friday. We required the TWA-ID number of individuals as an input field. And the reason we want to do this, we have the ID numbers of all 20,720 applicants. So we could check to see if there was any duplication of surveys. If I sent it to my brother in Colorado, if he took it, we were able to check the data and clean the data up to make sure the intended results were from the applicants only. One thing that we learned, a link was made. So these were emailed individually to those hunters. So we sent an individual email with a link and said, would you like to take this survey? Would you please take this survey? Click the link. Somebody made that link public by an applicant, because only applicants had this. And so we've got some additional work to do to verify that these preliminary results I'm going to show are really representative of only applicants. We're not able to do that. We put the ID number in there as a required field, but it didn't show me some coding you can do. If I put in a wrong ID number or one that wasn't on the list, it wouldn't allow you to take the survey. Again, we didn't have time on the front to do that. So we're having to do the work on the backside, which again, I want to emphasize these are preliminary results. So again, we invited 20,000 folks to apply or to complete the survey. Almost 3,000 responded. So that's about 13%. It's kind of low. Most surveys these days are running around 30%. But we did have a fairly good response size there. We did find that there were 67 duplicate ID numbers. So one person took it 67 times, or a number of people took it multiple times. I don't have the details on that. We also found almost 300 invalid ID numbers. And so if I typed my number in and I, hit the wrong button and put a incorrect number for myself in there, and it didn't exist, that number didn't exist, I would be in that group. Or if I was not an applicant and I typed my real ID number in there, that's one of those groups. So we know that there was, 360 almost responses that are in these that we received that were not of the intent from the intended audience. So we've cleaned those 350 out of there. Again, we've not had time to really go back through and make sure there's not other errors in there. So we can do that. We didn't have time before the meeting today. So this is the feedback survey asked of all applicants. 75% of the respondents preferred the blinds be hopped by the non-permit holders. So this number went up a little bit from our previous 50-50 sort of split. What was the drawing preference of the folks that had applied? 63% said in person, 4% were undecided or didn't have a preference, and 33% preferred the computerized drawing. So those are all the results. I think I'm gonna take a swig of water while you glance through these.
I actually think what
Okay.
we'll do right here before we start into recommendations is we'll take a 10-minute break.
Okay.
All right. We'll be
Thank you.
back in 10 minutes. Thank you. All right, folks, let's take our seats and come to order. All righty. Chief Benedict, you're recognized again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that break to wet my whistle, as you will, if you will.
Whatever.
It's pretty dry. So really, I believe this is the final slide we have. No, we have one more after this. Based on the feedback we received, those various surveys that we had shared with you, there's a lot of information and no one fell out of their seat, so that was good. No one's eyes are crossed as far as I can tell. These are the recommendations from the agency that pertain to the rule change hearing that we're in right now. And I've numbered these so that if there's discussion about some, it'll be easier to communicate. I've also listed them in groups by tier. So I'll just read through them now. So the agency recommendation moving forward for public land duck hunting is that we require all applicable resident licenses and permits to apply for tier 1s. So this would be moving away from the application fee, and the recommendation here, again, based on public input, is that we really limit tier 1s to residents only. Just a reminder, there was 439 tier 1 sites this year total. Tier 1, also there, bullet number 2, we recommend that we continue the computer application, but we change that so that you apply and then draw by an individual WMA. So if you want to hunt at Camden, you can only apply for Camden, essentially. Bullet 3, for the tier 1 permits, we would have an in-person announcement on the first Saturday in August. This would allow us to go back into those communities and talk to hunters and visit about that. You would not need to be present to win. It's more of an announcement. And the final recommendation around around tier 1 is any unclaimed tier 1 permit where they don't submit their NOI. Those would be issued at the regional offices. So we'd have region 1 would have a day set aside, a day and a time where folks would come in to claim any tier 1 permits that were not claimed in person, first come, first serve. And then we have the same in region 2 for the region 2 tier 1s that were unclaimed. That would be kind of in favor of locals to get those permits. Bullet 5, tier 2s. These are the pool hunts. We're moving back towards what we had before we started this whole project. We would allow either the applicable licenses or an application fee. Again, this is reverting back to what we had before we changed this process. Tier 3, all those sites we're recommending we put back into tier 1s. So there'd be 10 more sites. So if you look at the number in the first bullet, 439, if you add those 10, we'd be at 449 tier 1 sites for next year. So we increase the tier 1 number by 10. Just a reminder there in slide bullet 7 is that the tier 4 sites that we had this year, they were there as a result of no one building or claiming a permit or building a blind. So there's 95 sites this year that were tier 4 that automatically, as the rule was previously, revert back to tier 1. They're included in the 439 there, but we just wanted to share that information with you.
Is that the extent of the recommendations?
I have one more slide.
Okay.
So the last slide here is a summary of the rule changes, and you all should have a headline in your packet or on your iPad. This slide represents changes both to 1660.01.02 rules and regulations governing birds and 1660.01.08 rules and regulations governing hunts. And you'll see at the very end of each bullet an italicized number. Like the first one is 02. That's the changes that we have in that first rule about birds. So most of these are kind of clarification things that we felt were important to bring to you today. We wanted to correct the age for the youth guardian. So during a youth hunt, you have to have an adult with you as a youth. And we changed that from 21 to 18 years old. That was an error that we did not include during the last rule hearing that y'all did. Clarification of remnant blinds. In the rule now, it says that there may or may not be a tier 4 blind on site, a blind on a tier 4 site. And we just clarified that you can't build a blind on a tier 4 site, but there might be one there from last year. So again, just clarification of what we meant, and we didn't write it in the rule correctly. We added a specific date for removal of tier 1 blinds. Previously, I think it was 60 or 90 days. We just made a firm date of April 30th. Again, this is in the O2 rule. We clarified the maximum party size on Lick Creek WMA at 5. Again, that was an omission, I think, when we did it last time. And then the final piece here in the summary is that we omitted the landowner license exemption for applying for crane tags. So anyone that wants to apply for crane tag now, regardless if they're a landowner or not, will have to have the appropriate licenses. And then there were some grammatical errors, edits rather, that we made in both of the rules. So, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my presentation of the data from the surveys, as well as a summary of the changes of both the rules you're considering today.
Okay, thank you. Conduct this hearing in this manner. I'm first going to entertain motion and second from the commission. We will not vote immediately on that. We will hear public comment first. Again, public comment is limited to 3 minutes per person. You're to come to the microphone. You're to tell us where you're from and what your name is. After we have heard the public comment, then of course it'll be open for debate by the commission and any discussion therein. So at this point, I entertain any motion that's offered with regard to the rule as proposed by the agency.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the rule as presented with the recommendations from the staff.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Woods seconded the motion. All right, ladies and gentlemen, at this point, members of the public who wish to comment on this rule as proposed are recognized to come forward. If you would raise your hand, I'll have you come up. Yes, sir.
Good morning. My name's Mark Hall. I'm from Gallatin, Tennessee. I hunt West Tennessee primarily. Appreciate all the work y'all have done on this. The one question I have is looking at all the pie charts and all the information that was brought in, it seems that everybody that is hunting is in favor of blind hopping. And nowhere did I see that addressed on the changes this time. It's kind of left out of that point. I hunt West Sandy Bottoms, Big Sandy Bottoms, Old Hickory some. And, you know, depending on the water level, depending on the time of year, depending on if it's frozen or not, there are tier 2 blinds where people may come out and hunt 2 hours in the morning, as you said. They may limit out, they may go home, their kids may get cold, but there's people that ought to have the opportunity to go get in those blinds after that. And if you look at the, it may not have been big margins, but if you look at the margins, I believe most duck hunters in Tennessee, both that draw the tier 1 blinds and the tier 2, are in favor of the blind hopping rule. And I was just curious why that was not addressed. I know I read something on y'all's website about the reason you was not going to allow hopping. It was dangerous or it led to confrontations. I've been hunting 40 years and I've blind hopped probably as much as anybody in the world. And in 40 years, I've had one confrontation. I don't understand how you can say that can be confrontational where the tier 1s are not confrontational or the permanent blinds are not confrontational. So I was just asking you why that was not addressed in the changes this year. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mark. At this point, we're not in the mode of answering questions. We're taking comments, and I understand your comment. Next. Yes, sir.
My name is Vance Foreman. I hunt in Henry County. Do y'all have a chart that shows what describes tier 1 through tier 4? Because I'm getting a little confused on what's that mean?
Do we have a chart?
No, sir, I apologize. We didn't think to put that in there. I can do it real quickly if you like.
Okay.
Okay. So, sir, tier 1 is a 60-day blind, or you get a permit. You get a permit for 60 days. So that's the old the old blinds were years ago, it was a 60-day or season-long blind. So a tier 1 is a full season. A tier 2 are agency-built blinds. They're metal structures. We brush them. We've got some more to build this year. There's 42 of those. Tier 3 was so the tier 2 has two types of permits. You have a Friday, Saturday, Sunday permit. For most of them, obviously opening weekend, you wouldn't have the Friday, but it's a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then a Monday through Thursday hunt. So there's 2 hunts each week. And you get a permit for, you select which week you want and which days you want. But that's how that works. It's a 3 or 4 day hunt. And then the tier 3s are, if you receive a tier 3 permit, it's good for 7 days, and it's a stake in the ground. So you can hunt out of a boat blind, you can stand next to a tree, you can bring a little temporary blind. Those are the options for that. We got some information from the Duck Hunter survey, the 2019 survey. Some folks wanted 2 or 3 days hunt. Some folks wanted more than that. So that's why we went to the tier 3 as well. A tier 4 site is really not a site in itself. It's a tier 1 site, 60-day structure that wasn't claimed by somebody. So it really becomes a first come, first serve site. There may or may not be a blind on a tier 4 site. If there was a blind last year, no one claimed it this year, there'll be a blind there.
Sir, if you would, please come to the microphone. Thank you.
So if you draw a tier 4, you're responsible for putting a blind on it.
No one draws a tier 4. If I drew a tier 1 site and I didn't claim it when the agency sent me an email and said, you've got a permit, it would become a tier 4.
So it's a non-huntable.
It's huntable. And if you show up there first, it's yours for the day.
How are you going to hunt it?
Out of a boat, out of the existing blind.
If there is no blind, so you have to hunt it out of a boat?
We addressed that. We put it into a tier 1 in the recommendations, correct? In the new recommendations, the tier 4s are becoming tier 1s.
Okay, that makes sense.
That's what you're
right.
asking. So it has reverted back to a tier 1.
Perfect.
If nobody wants it, then it becomes a tier 4 after nobody, if that drawing is wants it, goes back to a tier 4, so somebody can hunt it.
Right.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Other comment? Yes, sir.
Again, Ron Carrier from Dixon. I noticed one of the first slides that he presented, he was talking about before 2021, there were so many applicants that were awarded, and it was fewer than when they did the 2022 or before 2021. And that, I think, may be skewed because before 2021, you had to have all your license, everything in order to draw. Now, with this new system, you could enter your wife, your daughter, your kids for $12. So I think, and they would still be applicants if they were selected in that process. So that may be a little misleading. Why were only the applicants on this feedback targeted, and why not all the hunters? Why not? Are you telling me that just the people that were chosen for a tier 2 blind were selected to fill out this survey that you
Mr.
got?
Carrick, if you'll address your comments to us.
Okay.
That's fine.
Well,
that's fine.
And then the last comment that I have is, I'm all for the in-person, because Old Hickory, Cheatham, they aren't really places that people want to hunt. And if somebody from East Tennessee draws a blind, they haven't made that commitment there, it reverts to a tier 4 because nobody does something. So that's one of the issues that I have. But if we have to go to this drawing, which he's submitted up there for the computer, will they be able to make the 8 applicants in a party and now have 48 selections? They're in the drawing in 2019, only one person. If you had 8 people, you were only one applicant. So they had that flaw. You were only able to choose 24 choices. Well, we know now that from the tier 2 draws that you could make 48 selections. So I'm asking that for places like Old Hickory that has 80 blinds, and now you have to choose from one WMA, that when they make this, if you have a party of 8, they all have a shot of getting the blind, and you have 48, at least the 48 choices.
All right.
And that's,
Okay. Thank you, sir. Joe, I will follow up on that just briefly. How were he talked about how you chose who you would sample.
So commissioners, there's no change recommended for how we do the application process. And I'm going to maybe get to Susie, our chief of licensing, in a minute. But so what we did last year and what we're recommending to continue is that your parties are formed up front. So as you apply, you form your party, and only those people will get a permit, right? You can bring extra guests up to the maximum of 8, but only those that apply as a party would get the quota permit, including if you're an individual. And we made a change for this year that if there's a party of 8, there are 8 chances in the barrel, if you will, in the computer to draw that. So we have, if there's 6 parties, 6 members of the party, you'd have 6 chances in the barrel. So we made that change this year to allow for that increased odds, I guess you could say. Does that answer the questions?
this year, yeah, you made that change, which was a good change, but you only allowed 24 selections in this year's draw. And they said that that was the computer limitations is what we were told. But then when they did the tier 2 draws, it was determined that they could make 48 selections.
I'm going to defer to Susie if I could.
Susie, tell these folks who you are, what your job is here.
I'm Susie Spriggs. I'm the chief of the licensing division. If the commission does see fit to allow 48 choices for the season long, we do know now, as Mr. Carrier mentioned, to accommodate that request.
Okay, but that's not the recommendation, Joe, at this point.
Mr. Chairman, I believe we missed that piece of this. I also don't know that it would take a rule change to make that accomplished. So we didn't include it here because it's not part of the rule change. Just
Okay.
one other previous thing.
So that can be done by the agency then, apart from this rule. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you both. Okay, other comments? Yes, sir.
Ricky Robertson from Stewart County. Hey, I only hunt, I'm one of those guys, I hunt 58 out of the 60 days. But me and my guys, we exclusively hunted Barkley Unit 1 with Dover Bottoms. Okay, the blind hopping was the thing that I had that as of right now, the card holder has to be in the blind before shooting time. Okay, like our guys, we went down there 3 times, and we were the ones who put $800 a piece in the blind, build a nice blind, and there's always somebody in there. Okay, we're all law enforcement or firefighters. Okay, sometimes we don't get off till like 8 o'clock in the morning. So I would like to see either when the blind, whoever gets drawn for the blind gets to put in their 7 other card holders, like you used to at the handheld drawing. When your name got drawn, you could call up your guys and everybody get a card, or have it to where the card holder can show up anytime during the day. Because if you're on your way to the bottoms and you have a flat tire and you're late, somebody's in your blind, and you put all that time and money, took off work to get into the blind, and you can't do it because somebody other group's in there. See, so I think it should be, if you're a card holder, you should be able to get in your blind anytime during the day. You know, and no, it was other groups were in our blind before. And let's see, like we actually only had 2 card holders, but they had duty that day, and they can't get through the bottom until like 8:30 in the morning. So when we got there to go to our blind that we built and put money in, there was a group in there, and they wouldn't budge. So I just had to call everybody and say, hey, we got to go home. We all live within 10 minutes of the bottoms. That's why we hunt there. We don't go to Camden or Reelfoot, nowhere else. That's all we hunt.
So your suggestion would be that if a group puts in all 8 card would be card holders.
Correct.
Okay.
If for some reason this year we all put in, like 2 guys put in at work, 2 more put in here, you know, we was all separated, and only 2 of them put in together when they were at the firehouse. See, so they got drawn. So the rest of us didn't have cards. But when they were on duty, when we got off, we couldn't go hunting because somebody had already occupied our blind. And some of those guys are getting in them blinds at 3:30 in the morning. I don't think you're supposed to be there until 4, but they were occupied away. It got to where we lived 10 minutes away. We were having to get to the bottoms at 4 o'clock, 2.5 hours before shooting time, to make sure that we were in our blind before anybody else was. And I just think if we're putting all the money and stuff into it, and we should be able to hunt, I think it should be like the tier 2 blinds. Anytime you show up with your card, you should be able to hunt that blind regardless if it's occupied or not. That's just how and I always say that because it happened. I've been hunting down there 30 years, and this was probably the first time it happened where people just they didn't care. I don't care if you built a blind or not. Show them your card or go home. And so we went home, So anyway, everything else was addressed. It's kind of funny, but that's pretty much all I got. Other than it'd be nice to add first responders to the military hunt. So other than that, that's it. Thanks.
And lawyers.
Want me to second it?
Yeah. So Joe, would you address that? Now you're talking about, are you proposing that it be done such that each of these members of the group would be a card holder?
Yes, sir. That's what we do now. So
Okay.
last year, this past season, that's what it was. If you were in the party that got drawn, each party member would receive a permit.
Right.
And so they could go by themselves. They could go with their full group. They could go with a partial group.
So to address the gentleman's concern, you just put in as a party and he would list all of the firefighters and
Correct.
policemen, et cetera. Okay.
And they will get their multiple choices, even though they're a party.
Right.
With our new way.
Yes, sir. Okay. Mr. Richardson.
Sharon, I just pointing out the other piece there, that the discussion really was a little bit more about hoppability too, in the sense that the gentleman saying that he wasn't able to hunt a blind that he drew because it was being hopped by somebody else. And the rules clearly give that person that hops it priority if they're there. If the card holder is not in the blind by legal shooting time, that person that comes into that blind gets that preference that day. So just make sure the commission understands there's really a couple things going on there. The system certainly allows for the issuance of the full party's cards. That's the way it's set up now. But the hoppability is also part of the gentleman's concern.
And so long as one of the card holders is there, they're blind for that day.
That's correct.
But he was saying their party was being beat there even before shooting time. Hoppability still not after shooting time, right?
Yeah. He was also asking that tier 1s be like tier 2s and not be allowed to be hopped.
Yeah, I think what Commissioner Childers just alluded to, at what point in time does a hoppable blind become hoppable? Let's let Deputy Maxidon
30 minutes
answer.
after sunrise is the legal time currently.
Okay.
30
So
minutes
somebody
before
somebody
sunrise.
sitting.
30 minutes before sunrise. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. 30
Good.
minutes before sunrise. I'm sorry.
Legal shooting time.
Okay, let's see. That's a good point. If somebody's in that blind at 4 o'clock in the morning when you get there, they haven't properly hopped that blind. They haven't legally hopped that blind.
That's illegal.
All right. All right. Very well.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
as I understand the gentleman's question, he might not be a card holder, but he is in this group. So if he shows up at the legal time and someone's already in the blind, he doesn't have any right to it because he does not have a card holder. Someone else is a card holder in the group. They only had 2 card holders instead of the 8.
I believe that's correct. Staff agree? Okay. They're nodding their heads affirmatively.
So our recommendation is a party of 4 minimum as our car holders, right?
The
Like,
agency
I'm
doesn't
making
have a
sure we-
recommendation on party size
Okay.
that we presented.
I'm just curious if we're recommending. Okay, thank you.
All right. Other comments from members of the public? Any members? Yes, sir. You look like you're ready to go, but the season's closed.
I'm just dressing comfortable. Anthony Ashley from Gallatin, Tennessee.
Yes, sir.
And I really have a comment that turns into a question. I seen that we were looking at the in-person blind drawing come back, but only as an award process and not an actual reach in the barrel, grab our ticket, or have our ticket drawn, our name called. So that's the concern, is that there were computer issues since we've went to the computer blind draw, which has ultimately happened to be human error. We noticed 2 examples this year that I'd like to share at the Old Hickory blind draw, where at the touch of a key, it scrambled names instead of ID numbers. So eventually, by the 3rd time of the swipe of the key on the computer, we had multiple last names with different first names listed at the midseason leftover tier 2 draw. And then, which knocked people out of their opportunity, because we're looking at creating more opportunities for the duck hunter. And also the tier 2 blinds, in a nutshell, the enforcement of people being able to hop those blinds is really going to be a challenge for the agency, just because of the time, the legal shooting time, and then the blind becomes hoppable. And I'm wondering, has the agency reached into that to look at that point of the hoppability of these blinds being an issue for the law enforcement of the TWRA?
All right. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So we have had a couple of issues with computers. Of course, this was the first year we rolled this thing out. And Joe, we ironed out any issues, known issues at this point?
I believe so, sir. Let me look at Susie, our license chief, to make sure that I'm not misspeaking.
Couldn't hear you, Susie. Sorry.
So there's actually 2 separate issues there. The issue that the gentleman's referring to was a different draw process than what is being recommended by the agency. That is a leftover that, yes, there was a slight error. We have worked on those and worked out those kinks. But the recommendation for the agency is basically to show you all in person at the WMAs what has been drawn, what's been reviewed and tested by the agency to ensure accuracy.
Okay. All right. Now, the second issue would be law enforcement related, and that would be the question of enforceability of the hoppability rules, if you would.
Let me defer to Deputy Director Maxidon at this point. I don't see the colonel in here.
Yes, sir.
He's not tall enough.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're standing.
Sergeant Ryder, can you leave there?
Yeah. Thank you, Sergeant.
Mr. Chairman, can we ask for this gentleman to come back up and
Sure.
clarify what question he's asking
Absolutely.
about enforceability?
Do you mind coming back up, sir?
The question that I left the podium with kind of leads into another question with the law enforcement, but I would like to draw the attention to that there were several issues this year, not confrontations, but on people wanting to hop blinds that people camped in. It happened all over the state. It happens in state Tennessee. If you're going to duck hunt, you're going to run into that. But the law enforcement side, how far have we went with that aspect of looking into these rule changes of making the tier 2 blinds hoppable from the law enforcement side of the agency? And also I'd like to add, the blind buying that seemed to really kick a lot of this off. How far has the agency, and this isn't directed towards anyone, it's more of a comment, how far has the agency went into prosecuting and running sting operations to stop blind buying? because a lot of our problems started with what we thought was blind buying.
The third part of that, or the last part of that, as I understand it, kind of gets into what law enforcement is doing now to investigate and prosecute blind buying and selling, which is a crime. And I know that we are actively looking into those cases, and I am not permitted to discuss that at this point, okay? The second part was the issue of hoppability and the enforcement. He says folks camping in blind. So can you address that?
I can. I think the first part he was asking about them being hoppable, and that's being discussed today. The second part is we've actually made a couple of cases. I won't get into the specifics of those, but we did prosecute one case for buying and selling the blinds this year. And then the second part is we actually wrote several citations for blind hopping this year. So we do enforce that. Obviously, we don't catch everyone if it's not reported, but those that are reported, we do prosecute those cases, and several of those happen this year.
All right, thank you. Anyone else has a comment? Yes, sir. Come forward. Oh, okay. If you'll hold up one second.
Mr. Lashley, were you asking Director Maxedon or asking law enforcement to maybe comment on what they thought, what they worry about, or what they thought the problems would be if we introduce more hoppability in Tier 2? Because I thought that's what you asked, but I'm not sure. And
Yes, sir. And that's what I probably failed to clarify is, have we thought the process of the hoppability of the Tier 2s into the law enforcement? Because it is a wide area that's, you know, we don't have a man for every blind to police in the state of Tennessee. So even with these Tier 2 blinds, I just see that issue coming into play. If we leave them unhoppable, it stops it. But if the Tier 2 blinds are hoppable, have we thought into, even from the law enforcement side with the TWRA, to move forward with these rules on making the Tier 2 blind hoppable?
would you be willing to comment on that, or?
Yes, sir, we will.
Okay.
So that, if you saw the agency's recommendation, as far as the Tier 2s, we did not recommend to make them hoppable. And that's one of the reasons, is for having confrontations. We don't want hunters to be out there having confrontations where we have to enforce it. Although the Tier 1s are hoppable, and we do enforce that whenever we get called out on that.
That answered my question.
All right, thank you. You good, Commissioner?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, very good. All right, other comment? Yes, sir.
I'm Brad Carrier from Charlotte, Tennessee. I appreciate y'all allowing me to voice some questions and concerns. First off, me and Dr. Wright talked a few weeks back while I was actually in a duck blind. And we talked and discussed about a potential of a secondary or maybe even now with the recommendations, a tertiary draw for the what would be Tier 4 locations to allow locals who have interest in the non-desirable blinds, maybe they weren't worked on by a certain date. That there's a regulation in there currently. There's a October 21st or sometime at that point. There's a regulation where if the blind is not properly built or maintained, that it falls into a first come, first serve location. And what I was, and what me and Dr. Wright had discussed is that we maybe move that date to maybe October 1st and allow a time for a tertiary draw for locals so that these Tier 4, again, I think there was 95 locations this year, have the ability to be worked on, to make some repairs to blinds, or local would have a card to that blind. Old Hickory is really one of the concerning locations. We have a lot of people moving into the Nashville area, and especially around that area, Lebanon, and I'm losing my train of thought there in Gallatin. And if you lose a structure like that, it may lose the, I guess, relationship between somebody moving here and connecting the dots or asking questions. What is that structure out there on the lake doing? Instead of having somebody show up opening morning at 6:30, and that's law, or at opening morning and at shooting time, being awakened by gunfire. I know that has been an issue with law enforcement and having to direct some of those resources on calls. And so that would, allow some of those locations to be properly maintained, so you're able to take more people or local. So I just had a son born 8 days ago, so I could maybe take him if I don't have a blind here in a couple of years, that I can go to maybe a less preferred location, have that comfort of a blind, the safety of a blind. And that, again, that was just one question I have. I may stay up here. Do you mind addressing this as a motion, or?
I can't entertain a motion
Yes,
from you.
sir. Yes, sir.
But I'm happy to ask Deputy Maxidon to address that if he's able.
There was a lot there,
Yes.
Mr. Carrier, but I think I got the one. I think you're asking to move from the fourth Monday in October to the 1st of October for blind construction. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
And maybe allow for a tertiary draw to what was proposed, because I saw where there was going to be a secondary draw for these locations to not go tier 4, to be able to maintain these hunt locations and have structures on these locations.
So I'll answer that in a two-part question. So the first part, if it's a will of the commission, I think we would be fine to move to the 1st of October. That's fine. What that does is it makes a shorter window for hunters to be able to get their blind ready. There's a little bit less time to do that. And I don't think that's a problem for most hunters. The second part is we would need this leftover draw that we're talking about at the regional offices. We would need to keep that schedule like it is, because if we wait and do that till later in October, it doesn't give people time to build those by the time we start our pumping operations.
And maybe my recommendation of October 1st is too liberal, but allow a tertiary draw for these locations. We don't want to see these structures go away. We haven't, and as many of you know, we have enough pressure on ourselves as hunters as it is.
Mr. Carey, we're after the same thing that you are. We're trying to get these things allocated, and that's why we made that recommendation. It's up there. It's not a draw. It will be a leftover like we do our other permits, and folks would come in. And we feel like if they're willing to come to the office to get that they're willing to build a blind. So we're trying to help that situation. That's why we made that recommendation.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Carrier.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Deputy Maxidon, could you clearly articulate, you said we could do this with reference to moving it from the 3rd week in October to the 1st. Could you clearly articulate for us how would you express that?
He's asking about the construction date. Whenever we assess the blinds, is currently the 4th Monday in October. We could move that to the 1st Monday in October for the completion deadline of those blinds.
From the 4th
to the 1st
Monday in October?
Yes, sir.
To the 1st Monday in October.
Well, I think he said October 1st.
I said October 1st. The reason why I say earlier in October, most blinds are brushed in oak. And by the time the 4th Monday in October rolls around, the chemical change in getting oak brush on a blind is impacted. It's tough to be able to properly brush a blind in that time frame.
Commissioners, just so you know what I'm saying, we'll entertain him. What that does is allow the people that construct and build a blind a lot shorter duration to have it ready. So it could hurt some hunters. They might have a different opinion of Mr. Carrier. Some may want it, like for Gooch WMA, they may want that length of time because some areas stay wetter throughout the year. It takes them a little bit later in the season to get theirs completed. But we'll leave that up to you all if you want to entertain that.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Does that take a motion or is that an internal policy change?
It doesn't really even have to, it'll take a motion to be in there, but my recommendation, if you would ask for that, I would probably leave it the fourth Monday in October. I'm just saying if that's something y'all want to entertain, it's out there to do that.
And I will, here in a moment, we're going to entertain motions for amendments, and that might be a proper motion, but we'll get to that in a second.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Carrier.
And secondly, on the, go ahead. As far as going back to the amount of draw preferences, I assume this means that the computer, the tier 1 draws will be through Brent or through the Go Tennessee Outdoors account. Is that correct? Okay. With these WMAs, different WMAs have different numbers of blinds. Are we going to, do we have a certain cap of how many we can have? I know Ron Carrier, my father, had proposed 48. Is there a certain cap limitation through the computer that limits us to 48, or can we have that number match the WMA blinds total? So if you're going to be drawing from a individual WMA and say it's Old Hickory and there's 80 some odd blinds at Old Hickory and you only have 48 selections, you're leaving out a lot of preferences that could otherwise be in that draw. And so that is my question, is there a certain limitation in that? And that may be a question for Brant. I don't know.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Carrier. Jason or Chris?
The direct question of, is there a system limitation? 48 is what we have tested, what we know works, what we know there is no problems with, and covers the vast majority of the number of blinds on most WMAs. Certainly, I think it is something that we can give consideration to, but beyond just maximizing the choices, we also have to take into consideration when someone goes in to a licensed agent, which people can go into a licensed agent and apply. Those agents, to go through more than 48 selections, can get somewhat arduous and time consuming. We want to be respectful of those agents. We also want to be respectful of the system and not bend it to the breaking point. We've gone through some snafus that have been talked about. We have ironed those out, and we have gone through a very rigorous set of testing protocols that we're very comfortable with at the 48 number. And I think by going to, if it's the will of the commission to go to 48 selections on the tier 1, that will be twice as many selections as we've been allowing previously. To go beyond that, I think we would have to have some conversations with our vendors about the level of confidence and perhaps some of the other issues that Ms. Spriggs may be able to shed some light on with how it may impact some of our licensed agents.
All right. Thank you, Chris. All right. Any other members of the public who wish to comment at this time? Yes, sir.
My name's Bernie Cheatham from Old Vine.
I'm sorry, Bernie
Cheatham.
Uh-huh.
First thing, I want to thank TWRA in the Reelfoot Lake area for the effort they did on the cleanup from the storm, and especially getting the debris back away from the lakeside along Lake Drive so people can access their boathouses and their property. That was done just here shortly. I appreciate everybody's work on that. The next thing concern is on these tier 2. I'm on the Duck Hunters Refuge a whole lot. There's some people against tier 2. There's a lot for it. Most of the ones on the tier 2 don't want to speak up because of the people that's against them. I'm completely for it. Everybody seems to enjoy it. You can either cross the state with computer draw. Go either 3 or 4 days, come to Reelfoot, Gooch, wherever you want to go. It's a good program, works pretty well. The hopping, I'm for no hopping on the tier 2 blinds. Mr. Benedict showed a slide a while ago that when they checked the tier 2, there was more tier 1 blinds empty than tier 2. Well, these people that complain about wanting to hop tier 2, why don't they go to these tier 1s? You know, it's not, and they're the ones, most of them, is going to cause the conflict because they want somebody to be there exactly time. You know, and sometimes people at tier 2 come from out of state or Middle Tennessee, may have a little trouble finding the blind or something. You know, I don't think it's a big deal because the number of tier 2 compared to all the blinds is a small amount. And they gripe about people leaving the blinds early, not hunting the last day. A duck hunter's not going to leave his blind early if the ducks are flying, and he'll hunt the last day unless emergency comes up. You know, but I do appreciate everything TWA does. Thank you.
Thank you very much. What percentage of our public blinds are tier 2?
10%.
10%. He says 8.55.
Well, if you add back the 10 tier 3, it's 8.55.
It was before, yes, sir. Before
That's
this
right.
recommendation.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, could I make a comment real quick? Been a lot of talk, and I'm relative to this last question, Jason or Chris or Joe, on the issue about this October date. That's not part of this rule hearing. Am I correct on that?
Yeah. No, sir. This would be the appropriate place to make any adjustments to those provisions. It's
Okay.
in this rule.
Okay, so that's in the rule, so that's where it would need to be done. And before we start into the deliberation, because I know the Wildlife Committee has been very deep into the discussions of all of this work and all the comments from the public, would it be appropriate that we go through exactly what we're going to be discussing before we get into the discussion? Because some things are outside of the rule. Does that make sense?
No, I'm not sure I understand you. What is it you want to do? You
I
want
just
to have
want to make,
staff?
yeah, I just
go
want
back
staff to
through
give
the-
one final summary after all the comments, exactly what we know. We know the hoppable issues. We know the licensing issues to
I
be
see.
in the draw. Just a quick overview, just so we don't start debating something that's outside the rule.
I think that's fine. I mean, I want everybody to know this commission is here to listen, and we have been listening. And this whole duck hunting thing has been about trying to improve duck hunting in Tennessee for everybody, and to make access to this sport available to everybody. And so I want to make sure that we fully vet whatever issues we got to deal with today. So yes, sir, we can do that. So, yes, sir, go ahead.
Deputy Directors, is there a way, referring to Mr. Carrington's question, that we could, them blinds that people don't want to build forever, have like a list you sign up for? If nobody wants to build a blind here, you have an opportunity. Would that solve the problem of the October 24th or whenever cut off for having a blind built in these areas where more people have moved in? Is that something we could look at? Like y'all know which blinds hadn't been built forever, the blind sites that become tier 4s. Yeah. On like Old Hickory or anywhere else, is there a list somebody can get on and say, I'll build a blind there? It'll go in the drawing next year. I mean, that creates more opportunity. It creates a blind that TWA does not have to build. It might get drew the next year because there is a blind there. Some people don't want to build blind. Some people want to build them, and it creates opportunity, and we're all about opportunity. Is that something we would have to vote on today, or is that something that could be looked in the rules? So let me make sure, just for clarity. So I think we're addressing some of that, Commissioner Childers. So what we do now, once they put in for the tier 1 draw process and they get drawn for a blind, have to file a notice of intent. And that's what we're trying to get at, is they let us know if they're going to take that blind builder or not. And then if they don't, then we're talking about addressing that in this new thing where they can come into the regional offices and take one of those permits and then go out. And then we go back at that time and see if that blind is built. And then we do post that so they can see which blinds are not built and which blinds haven't been taken. Those are the ones that revert to the tier 4. And at that point, they're first come, first served.
And
Okay,
is this part of what's before us in your recommendation today?
But let me. Yeah, the part regarding the leftover tier 1s, 10 days after we announce the winners of the draw, if we don't have a notice of intent for one of those tier blinds, it hasn't been returned, or if it's returned that they do not want the blind, our proposal is to have all of those permits available as leftovers administered in the regional office on a first come, first served basis. The other piece, when you talk about the deadline in October, if a person returns a notice of intent and claims a tier 1 site, but then doesn't build a blind, that permit is revoked and that site currently becomes a tier 4. The timing of what Mr. Carrier is proposing seems to almost be that we need to, his proposal would be that we move that time frame up to October 1st, evaluate construction. If blinds haven't been built, then try to award them to someone else at that time. But as Jason noted, the concerns, you're costing the regular hunters a month of blind building time if they do in fact intend to exercise their rights under the card. So really the October deadline is about revoking somebody's rights to the card, whereas this procedure on the front end will allow for sites that maybe are unpopular or go unclaimed to get built. So I think we're doing the best that we can to address this situation with the current proposal. And I think if we move the deadlines around, we may inadvertently affect some card holders that do in fact intend to build blinds in those 3 or 4 weeks of October that they currently have now.
All right, Jim.
All right.
Let me.
You both finish yours.
Okay, the number 4, done. That's from the draw. So the notice of intent goes out. They don't claim it. They do claim it, but they don't do it. Can we go in then and let them people build a blind the same way? I know it's getting late. We hadn't affected anybody else.
It's usually too late in the season, Mr. Childers, because if it's after that 4th Saturday in October date, and I'm going to use Gooch, it's in your area as an example, we are starting pumping operations that week. And at that time, you can no longer traverse that terrain to get there with a truck or a boat to start construction of that blind building.
Okay, I understand Gooch because it's special circumstances. Is Old Hickory pumped?
Yes.
Old Hickory's pumped also?
A lot of these areas, you're starting pumping operations the last week of October, the first week of November.
So Mr. Carrier, you do understand we do care? And we're glad you got a new son. I'm proud of you. But we do care. There's rules we have to follow. And everybody up here wants y'all to hunt. Believe me.
Mr.
Well
Chairman, if
said.
I might add a piece to that, I just conferred with Susie, our licensed chief. Want to just add another date in there for you. So number 4 here, unclaimed permits for tier 1 would occur. The time period that we're talking about here, when the list would be on sale, or the unclaimed tier 4s would go to the regional offices, is 2 weeks after the first Saturday in August. So the notice of intents are due 2 weeks later. So to Mr. Carrier's point, 2 weeks after the original drawing, that full list of any remaining tier 1 sites would be available. So there's almost no need to have another third draw, because you're just losing, if you got a permit and you accept it, you've got however many days to build your blind. If you didn't get a permit and you claimed a leftover, you'd only have 2 weeks less to build the blind. So again, that would save, like Deputy Director Richardson said, moving around the dates, you're really just talking about 2 weeks less to build that blind for the leftovers.
Commissioner Box.
I was just going to clarify on the recommendation that, as it is now recommended, that all the tier 3s would move to tier 1s. We'd have 449 total hoppable 60 days. Is that correct? Making sure I understand it.
Yes, ma'am.
And then the tier 2s, we have 42, but they're not hoppable.
That's correct.
Okay, let's make sure I understand it. Thank you. 95 more after that. Okay, thank you.
All right. Is there any other member?
95 are already in the 4.
Are there any other members of the public who wish to be heard at this point? Okay. The record will reflect that everyone who has wished to speak here today from the public has been granted that opportunity, and we appreciate you being here. Now, Commissioners, we have before us a motion and a second to adopt the rule as recommended by the agency. We're going to have deliberation at this point. If an amendment is offered, we will vote up or down on that single amendment before we will entertain any other amendments. In other words, we are not going to have amendments of amendments of amendments because I can't keep track of it. So I open the floor at this time for comments and discussion with regard to the motion that has been made and seconded for acceptance of the agency recommendations. Commissioner Monty Baloo.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I got a couple of questions for the agency. I was still just a hair confused on the draw. Well, first of all, let me ask you this. On the tier ones, we're going to require that you have a license to apply for tier ones. But tier twos, you could have a license or just a $14 permit.
That's correct.
Well, my question would be, what's the reasoning? What's the difference between a tier one and tier two? Why don't we require licensing for tier twos as well?
Part of it is consistency with other permits across the state. So turkey and deer, those kind of things. But also this really reverts the tier twos back to what the pool hunts were at Pagoda and Thorny Cypress. That was the previous way that those permits were allocated by having an either or. So either you have a hunting license or you have a quota permit. I don't know the numbers. Susie may have them, but the majority of folks that apply for those pool hunts historically have had sportsman's licenses. How much? 80%. So, and I think that holds true even for the tier ones. The work
so
this
20%
year.
20% of the people that put in for tier twos only buy a permit rather than having a license.
They still have to have a license.
If they get drawn and hunt. But just to put in, they can apply with only a permit.
The application fee. They pay the application fee.
Right. $14, right? Or 12.
Monty, one other clarification I would make there is that the tier two system is still going to be available to non-residents and they're shorter duration hunts. So if we required a license at application, you're talking about requiring an annual license for what may be in fact a 3-day hunt.
But tier ones in this recommendation are only for Tennessee residents.
That's correct. You're going to have to possess now one caveat to that for abundance of clarity.
Okay.
You're going to have to possess a resident license. That could be a lifetime license that you bought and have moved away from the state. That could also be a native Tennessean license because those are technically resident licenses.
Okay.
So
I'm with you. I understand
those
that.
resident types in order to get in the tier one draw.
Second question real quick is, I'm still just a hair confused on if we had an in-person draw, or when I applied for the tier twos this year, I could apply for multiple WMAs. So on the tier one draw this year, this coming year, will I be able to put in on Camden, Big Sandy, and Gin Creek? I only have to pick one area.
That was a request from the public. Yes, sir. So you'd be able to
One
pick
area.
Camden.
So like if I put in on Gin Creek, there's only 4 blinds in there that you can draw as tier one. So I've only got 4 selections, right?
That's based on public request.
Okay. All right. I'll go on to my second spiel. I've got a picture here, and you all have heard this story. The public may not have heard it, but I've told every commissioner. I've got a picture here on my phone, and you can't see it, but I'll be glad to show it to you afterwards. Its picture was made in 1986. I was 16 years old at that time. That was the first year I was eligible to put in on the duck blind drawing at Big Sandy. It was at the old work base. It wasn't down where it is now. I've attended every duck blind drawing at Big Sandy since I was about 6 or 7 years old. I'm 51 now. In this, it reads, Steve McAdams wrote it and put it in the local paper. And it says, I got lucky and got drawn. 3 of my friends there are signing up. I chose blind 9 at Big Sandy Bottom at last week's TWRA gathering. And this is the last sentence, and this is the key thing. Some 768 hunters registered for 81 blind sites on areas managed by TWRA. So in 1986, at the duck blind drawing, there were 768 people present. At the last one that we had in person in 2019, I don't know the exact number, but it was somewhere around 2,400, 2,500 people. That's how much duck hunting has grown. It is blown up. There are so many people. If you fly the Big Sandy River, Tennessee River, or anywhere you duck hunt, there are duck blinds everywhere. It's not complicated. Every one of them's got spinning wing decoys. Everybody's got 150 decoys out. Everybody is duck hunting. It's a popular sport. I still hunt this year. I've hunted on WMAs. There's not too many people in this room that can say they've been on WMAs more than me. I've hunted Camden since I was a little boy. I've hunted Big Sandy, Gin Creek, Harmon's Creek, Big Sandy Mudflats, and everywhere else in between. I'm an avid waterfowler. I'm for all sportsmen in the state of Tennessee. But as a commissioner, I represent West Tennessee. And the first topic I'd like to bring up is obviously the hoppability. I think personally, all the recommendations that the agency has brought forward, and I commend them for the work that they have done to do this. I think tier 2 blinds, this process has been a rocky road to say the least. I think our drawing system through Brant has been a train wreck. I hope those kinks have been worked out and it runs a lot smoother next year. So with that being said, I think tier 2s should be hoppable. It's 42 blinds across the state of Tennessee, 10% or 8.55, but it's also the best 42 blinds across the state of Tennessee. Okay. If you're going to attend this meeting, would you rather sit here where I'm at or where you're at, or do you want to sit outside where it's 32 degrees? You'd rather be right here. You're going to be where you want to be and have the most success at your hunt. There are blinds, duck blinds, as you all know, if you duck hunt, there's good spots. There's X. Where's the X? There's the X where that oak tree is on that point and ducks fly it and swing it and they want to work it. You can be 200 yards over there and the blind at the X is going to kill 750 ducks this year. That blind that's over there, 250 yards, you know how many ducks that blind's going to kill? 75 ducks. That's exactly right. If you know duck hunting, you know what I'm talking about. Certain blinds kill ducks, certain blinds don't kill ducks. If I'm in a tier 1 and I'm sitting there watching guys just wear them out all day long, and they're from Knoxville or Nashville or wherever, or they're local folks, I put in on tier 2s this year every time I could and didn't get drawn. I'm going to put in on them next year. Hopefully I'll get drawn. And if I do, I'll hunt it. But I think they need to be hoppable. I'm going to go through a few other reasons. I think there needs to be a caveat in there. That gentleman right there spoke about, tier 1s have been hoppable since we had duck blinds on WMAs. I've hopped them. I got a little old bitty boat that can fit in any boat chute in the bottom. And I got a little bitty boat because that's why there's different sized boat chutes. I've hunted blinds all my life, all over. And I've never had a conflict. How many conflicts have we had this year? Tier 1s can be hopped. Tier 1s can be hopped the last decade, 2 decades, 3 decades. We can what if it to death, but we can hop tier 1s now. There's over 400 blinds that we can legally hop now. But it may not be where you want to hunt because the best 42 blinds in the state of Tennessee are tier 2 blinds. So do you want to be in a better blind or do you want to sit back and watch the ducks work and not be able to hunt them? So with that being said, I think obviously the tier 2 system and the goal of TWRA is to create more hunting opportunities in this state. And this is doing this, but not making the tier 2s hoppable is, I think it's basically discriminating against some of the local hunters, the people that want to go and hunt and hop blinds. Obviously, somebody from Knoxville is not going to drive to Camden and hop blinds, but I might, or Mark Hall might, or all the other hunters. They want to hop blinds. Dover Bottom. I've hunted over there a couple of times. Not a lot, but I didn't draw a blind. I hopped them. I'd go there for an afternoon hunt. I think there needs to be a caveat in there to where, let's say 10 o'clock in the morning. You can't hop a tier 2 blind until 10 o'clock in the morning. That way it gives the hunters from wherever they're hunting, wherever they're from, they're out of town, they're not familiar with the bottom. It gives them from, say, 6 o'clock in the morning or 6:30, ample time, 2-3 hours to find the blind, get in it, and hunt it. If they want to hunt it all day, hunt it all day. It's their blind. You've got till 10 o'clock in the morning to claim that blind. If they don't claim it by 10 o'clock, it's open to whoever gets in it. just like every other blind in the state of Tennessee in the tier 1 section, just like every other blind. You know, we talk about the trashing of blinds. That would be maybe a what if issue. Well, you know, we created this program, so we need to manage it. I understand it may create a little more work, and I hate that, but this is our program. We've created it. We need to work it. We need to make sure it's successful. We don't have a lot of vandalism in tier 1 blinds right now. Nobody really tears up tier 1 blinds. Occasionally, you may have some damage. How many deer Xing signs on the highway home have you seen that have been shot? Has anybody ever seen a deer Xing sign that hadn't been shot on the side of the road? You know what I mean? People are going to tear stuff up occasionally. That's the price of business. I don't see any tier 1s being torn up. So I don't think that's going to be an issue. We don't have, like Mark Hall said, he's been hunting 40 years and had one conflict. Occasionally you're going to have some conflicts. You do it Little League baseball games. You're going to have, I've seen fights at the duck ramp. Nothing ever happened except a little fist fight. And it's usually over somebody shooting somebody's swing ducks, not a blind hopping situation. So I don't think violence is a reason not to make these blinds hoppable, nor vandalism. So I'm for it 100%. There's 42 tier 2s across the state of Tennessee. So if we have 42 blinds, let's just say, for instance, the 42 tier 2 blinds, and let's say one day 8 hunters got in every one of those 42 blinds. That's 336 hunters that had an opportunity to duck hunt in one of the top 42 blinds in the state of Tennessee. 336 hunters in one day that would hunt tier 2 blinds. And do you know how much that would cost TWRA? Nothing. We've already built the blinds. We've already brushed the blinds. They're there. We're creating opportunity at zero cost to TWRA. You got 336 hunters that hunt 6 hours. Let's say they hop a blind at 10 o'clock and leave early. They leave at 4 o'clock. That's 2,016 hours of sportsman time outdoors that we've created in one day. 2,016 hours in one day that, you know what it's cost us? Not a dime. It ain't cost us a dime. It's nothing. So I think, obviously, financially it's a no-brainer. I think it's a good deal. And we rely so much on the surveys. I've only been on the commission a short time, but that's what I hear. I hear surveys. Sportsman says, well, every survey you've got, it's from 42% to 75% people say they want to hunt or hop tier 2 blinds. You know, some of them may be flawed, but whatever. You can fluctuate it. If you live in West Tennessee and you see and talk to the people that I see in the grocery aisle and everywhere else, you'll know it's going to be an overwhelming majority that want this. As I said, tier 1s have been hoppable for a long time with no major issues. I'm for it. It may create a little bit more work for the agency, but I don't see a whole lot. If we're in the bottoms, we can swing by and check them and make sure that they're, capable. We need to be doing that anyway to make sure they're not hazardous, make sure something's not broken, to make sure that they're in the shape that they need to be. So I enjoy duck hunting just as much as anybody. It's my favorite sport I do. At this point in my life, I enjoy the sunrises and the sunsets and watching my dog work more than I do pulling the trigger. And I am for giving every opportunity to sportsmen out there to hunt these blinds, the good blinds.
All right, Commissioner, are you offering an amendment that would provide that tier 2 blinds should be hoppable not earlier than 10 a.m. in the morning? Is that what you're doing?
Yes, Chairman, that's correct. I would like to make a motion, exactly what you just said. Tier 2's amendment that tier 2 blinds in the state of Tennessee, all 42 of them, would be hoppable, but they would not be hoppable till 10 a.m., either in Central or Eastern time zone.
I got it.
And I was trying to think if there was anything else. At one point in time, we talked about a QR code or something to register when you pull into the blind. But, I don't know. I'll talk to Deputy Maxidon a little bit about that. But, if you hop a tier 1 blind right now, you don't have to register with a QR code. And No blinds have been burnt, no walls have been, blind had been shot up. So I think we would just cull that and just leave it to where, at 10 o'clock, they would be eligible to be hopped.
All right. Commissioner Baloo has offered an amendment to the original motion, which was seconded. The original motion being to approve the rule as recommended by the agency. There's now been an amendment offered by Commissioner Baloo to make all 48 Tier 2 blinds hoppable not earlier than 10 a.m. Do I hear a second? 42? Okay, 42, all 42. Do I hear a second? I have a second from Commissioner Stan Butt. All right, I'm going to take a quick break because one of our commissioners has requested it. He's desperately wanting a break. So when we come back, we'll debate this amendment. 5 minutes.
Y'all's hands. Yeah, thanks for coming. Appreciate it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you'll take your seats, please, and come to order. Quick, let's vote while Baloo isn't in here. All right. We are now considering the agency recommended rule, which has been offered an amendment by Commissioner Baloo to make all Tier 2 blinds, which are 42 in number, hoppable not earlier than 10 a.m. And that was seconded by Stan Butt, so that's now open for discussion.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask Deputy Director Richardson to quantify exactly what is meant by hoppable and how that works?
Certainly.
Entry hoppable?
Certainly.
So Commissioner Granberry, if you look at the current language of the rule, which is hoppability regarding Tier 1s, states a permittee must occupy the Tier 1 location by legal daily opening shooting time on the days the permit wishes to hunt. If the Tier 1 location is unoccupied at that time by the permittee, the first person or party occupying said Tier 1 location shall be entitled to the privilege of exclusive and uninterrupted use of that location. So what I am asking the commission to clarify in this motion about hoppability, if you say that the blinds are not going to be hoppable to 10 a.m., do you mean that no non-permit holder can be in that blind before 10 a.m.? Is that the motion for hoppability? Because there are situations where in the past on Tier 1 blinds, people will camp out in the blind waiting on legal shooting time, waiting. If the card holder comes, obviously they have to vacate the blind, but they can be in those Tier 1 blinds before a certain time. So just asking for that point to be clarified amongst the commission so we know the direction we're going.
Okay, well, I'm a little confused because the amendment that's before us relates to Tier 2.
But and what I'm suggesting is when we talk about hoppability, we're talking about something that's been in place for a long time and how people understand it. And so we need clarification from the commission on the direction. When we talk about a blind being hoppable, are you talking about the person's uninterrupted or rights to that blind once they've hopped it? Or are you talking about actual entry into that blind or legally being able to be in the blind before a certain time?
Yeah, we talked about that just a little bit, and I talked to both deputy directors about it and gentlemen from Stewart County. But I guess our original intent was to say for Tier 1s and two different times, say Tier 2s, you cannot enter the blind or the boat chute until 10 a.m. Now, we had mentioned that about Tier 1s as well, about you cannot hop a Tier 1, meaning you cannot enter the blind or the boat chute until 30 minutes before sunrise, legal shooting time, unless you have a valid card to that blind. So therefore, that would prevent you coming into your Tier 1 blind and having to run somebody out. Hey guys, we're going to hunt this morning. I got a card, whatever. That way, whoever drew a Tier 2, they don't have to run anybody out. No one's going to be in the boat chute. Nobody's going to be in the blind until 10 o'clock. Now, Deputy Maxidon said, there might be some issues with somebody, they could sit outside the blind 10 yards from it in a boat, I guess. I don't know how you would put parameters on that, but it would keep somebody out of the blind. They may be circling like some sharks. I don't know. It's a lot of what ifs in this situation, but I think that would keep them out of the boat chute. That would keep them out of the blind, possessing it or being in it. So yeah, I would like to add that to the amendment. Meaning that
I don't know that you're adding anything. Maybe I don't understand what you'd be adding. Because I understand it. Your amendment. Let me finish here. That all of the Tier 2 blinds were hoppable, but not earlier than 10 a.m.
Correct.
Which would mean to me you can't show up at first light at all.
Correct.
And claim that blind. Period.
Right. And that's for Tier 1s. But the only Tier 1s are we'll talk about Tier 1s in a minute. Say Tier 2s.
Let's just
Tier 2s, You cannot enter the blind or the boat chute if you're hopping it until 10 a.m. So what I'm saying is you can't go in there at 9:30 and sit in there. And that way the gentleman from Knoxville that drew it rolls in there at 9:55. So he's got to run somebody out.
Okay. I don't understand that as changing to any degree the rules regarding the hoppability of tier 1 and the timing of that. So I just want to make sure.
But hoppability is the same rule.
The question becomes, is that also the approach with the hoppability? Is that the commission's intent with the hoppability that currently is available for tier 1 blinds? Can someone enter a tier 1 blind before legal shooting time that does not possess a valid card for that blind? That is the question.
The current rule is they cannot. Am I correct?
I'm asking for, I think the language of this rule needs to be adjusted to clearly state that if that is the commission's intent, because I don't think that that has ever been clearly defined well enough. You can ask these hunters here, and I think Mr. Robinson's comments were along those lines. So I think there is a point of confusion. This is an opportunity to clear that up.
Okay. Commissioner, do I understand you to, your definition of hoppability would be that whatever the given hour is, whatever the tier, the blind cannot be hopped in the case of tier 2 before 10 a.m. It can't be occupied. It can't be, the boat can't be in the slip.
Correct.
Tier 1, likewise, not before shooting hours.
Correct.
That's how I understand your motion.
Sure.
Let
Yes,
me
sir.
restate your amendment then. So we have an amendment that's been offered that tier 2 blinds shall be hoppable not earlier than 10 a.m. Hoppability being essentially defined as any access to the blind. And as I understand the commissioner's clarification, hoppability as defined with reference to tier 1 would be no occupation of the blind before legal shooting hours. Now, given that clarification, Commissioner Butt, do you continue your second? Okay, so that's been seconded. Now I open for further discussion. No, sir, at this point, it's just deliberation by the. All right, come to the microphone.
It's been a certain way on the tier 1 blinds forever as far as hoppability. And we have a lot of friends and they may say, hey, I'm not using my blind tomorrow. You can have my blind. We go there and we're going to get there at 4 o'clock or whatever the case may be. I guess technically we would be considered hoppers, but we know by knowledge that they aren't going to be there. So I think that you're opening a can of worms if you change that law.
I appreciate your comment. I've stated the amendment.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's true. Okay.
Have I correctly stated your amendment, Commissioner?
All right. The gentleman brings a valid point up, and I'll be honest, we've talked about this a little bit and thought about it during break. I would like to change it just a hair, Chairman.
Okay.
The only thing I would
not
like
amending your amendment. You're clarifying
I'm clarifying
the language of it.
that
All right.
scratch tier 1s, tier 2s stays the same. You cannot enter or be within the bounds of the blind before 10 a.m. Scratch tier 1s. Tier 1s have not. I've hunted tier 1s my whole life.
Okay.
It's never been a problem.
We
You're
can
right.
come back to tier 1s if we need to do that. So there is a motion for an amendment. It was as originally stated, tier 2 blinds shall be hoppable, but not before 10 a.m. And that applies to all tier 2 blinds. I understand that's the motion you seconded, Commissioner Butt. All right. Any further discussion on this amendment? Commissioner Childers.
So with hoppability at 10 o'clock, in Tennessee, you've got a right if you have a permit to hunt without anybody harassing or bothering you. We got to think about that. These boats circling like wolves. You ain't going to kill no ducks with a boat 100 yards, 200 yards. it creates another problem for these people that have a 3-day hunt to make it not good for them. I know hoppability sounds great in theory, but if you think of it, there's no perfect way to do it. So do we make tier 1s 10 o'clock also, set at the boat ramp? I mean, the hoppability people want hoppability, but do you want hoppability your way, or do you want hoppability for the person that has the permit, that has the right to hunt without a liberal sitting there shooting a gun, without another duck hunter trying to run them off? We've got to think all this through because it's only 42 blinds. I might get my numbers right, but they'll be right in the papers, I'm sure. So we've got to think about these people because I hunt too all the time, and I've hunted WMAs, and I got to hunt one of these tier 2s. And if you're not one of them, you ain't going to get to hunt one of them good blinds. Promise you. So because they're going to know who's there for opportunity for the majority of Tennesseans, which you are protecting West Tennessee is your place. But the rest of us are from different areas. And we have to think about that also. And that's my only argument. If somebody would say there's a perfect way, there is no perfect way. But letting these people hunt these tier 2 without anybody harassing them, period, is best for it. Till we get another year or 2 in and see what happens. You can see we've give you lots of things because we realized there was a problem. We've tried to create opportunity, tier 4. There's other things we're going to do that we're going to try to do to make sure these blinds are hunted more instead of sitting still. But it's a process we're going through. But just saying, hop them where we can hunt them, that might not be the best thing for us right now. That's just another opinion. And thank you for your time.
Other comments? Commissioner Wright.
Thank you, Chairman. Now that we got this motion on the floor and we're discussing it leading up to the vote, I have some comments and thoughts. One is with the 10 o'clock time, you can't enter the boat shed or the boat, but you can go at 6:30 and sit in the hole, which hurts the experience of all the adjacent hunters. So the motion as it's presented is problematic in that regard to me. I just feel like there's going to be a boat tied up to that boat shed the whole morning. And that ruins that open boat just sitting out there unhidden, ruins the hunt for adjacent blinds. Just a reminder, the reason we put some of the better blinds for the public, and I don't think we stated this enough, the reason we put some of the better blinds in tier 2 was because they needed that to have a quality experience. Everybody that's hunted a tier 1 blind knows that you're hunting 1,500 decoys and a generator in an old freezer box with vents, and you've got pulleys, and you've got vortex and ice eaters, all sorts of things that a tier 2 hunter can't have. So if you got a tier 2 blind, you really need to have a little better spot to even have a quality hunt. And inadvertently, what we've done is we've made some of these not as quite as good spots better because they're more able to compete. They've got all that stuff. So I think that's lost sometimes when we discuss it. The second thing is we hadn't lost that opportunity. Everyone that likes tier 1 can put in for the tier 2. So I can put in for tier 1 or tier 2. And so those blinds aren't lost. That opportunity is not lost. It's just in a different flavor or format. We made a lot of investment. I think we need to listen carefully to our law enforcement. There will be some conflicts. Coach Ricky was talking about some of the conflicts they had. I can envision a lot of conflicts with people camping out in front of those blinds, not in the blind, the way this is presented. Always want to go with the agency recommendation when I think it makes sense. When it doesn't, I think the commission's good about trying to reverse that. And I think we ought to also recognize and consider when we're talking about all the amendments is that we've added 95 tier 4s back into tier 1 opportunities. Obviously, not all those will be built, but that's more tier 1s than we've had. We've added 10 tier 3s. We listened. All those are going back to tier 1s. There's a 1 WMA limit, limited to in-state for tier 1. And we've challenged the agency, public doesn't know this, to create more tier 1 opportunities, develop new lands, develop new sites in our existing WMA. So I think we've done a ton to create more tier 1s, but I'd rather not, just because of the investment we've had in the agency recommendation and law enforcement problems. For all the reasons I mentioned, I'd rather not have happen.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. Other comments from commissioners? All right, seeing none, we are now voting as to this amendment, which would permit all tier 2 blinds to be hoppable, but not before 10 a.m. So what we are doing is we are approving the original rule as amended at this point. I have a, no, we're voting on the amendment. We're voting on the amendment, correct. So at this point, all in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye. Opposed? No. Noes have it. The amendment fails. We are now back to the rule as recommended by the agency, and I will entertain any motions for amendments to that rule.
I would like to make another amendment. I don't think on the individual draw, you should be able to put in for an individual WMA. If you went to the Big Sandy site, drawing site, you drew out of the same barrel for Camden, Big Sandy, Gin Creek, and Harmons Creek. You drew for all those areas out of the same blind. So if you do individual WMAs, like I said, Gin Creek has only got 4 blinds in it. So you can only apply for 4 blinds out of the 80-something blind sites that are eligible. I think we should revert back to, if we're going to stay with the computer draw, we need to allow the people to draw for the blinds that were originally drawn for at each respective draw site. So at Big Sandy, we would draw, you would be able to put in for Camden, say Big Sandy, you pick the Big Sandy draw site, you would be able to put in on the Camden, Big Sandy, Gin Creek, and Harmons Creek for any of those blinds on the computer draw. If you put in on, and Springville, I guess Springville bottom would be in that as well. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Sorry, Commissioner Blue, if I may, and you're right, we should have stated that in there, and that was our intent, was to say that we would go back to what the original drawings were held. So you're correct in what you're saying. We've already got that in place. It would not require an amendment.
Okay. You're withdrawing your motion
I
there?
was going on what,
No, I understand. Okay. Any other motions to amend the rule?
I thought there was a request from the public to put a minimum number in the blinds of 4 or 5. I thought.
That was just for Lick Creek.
Yeah. I remember seeing that.
Oh, Wally.
It wasn't necessarily the public, but looking at creating opportunities. In the tier 2s, they're saying they're not getting hunted. And tier 1s also, if we had a minimum of 4 people to put in for the drawing, you're still going to get your 4 chances. But that way we make sure there's multiple card holders in those blinds to eliminate problems that we have about no card holder in there. That was my recommendation.
That's not in there.
It's not in there, but that was our next thing we were going to talk about. So I'll make a motion to amend it to a minimum of 4 up to 8. That way you'll have at least 4 card holders for every tier 1 and tier 2 blind. And that way you have multiple card holders. That way, hey, it might 4 of us put in. 3 of them can't go. I carry 7 other people.
I'll second.
Or I
that
might
motion.
swap days with them. They have multiple card holders. The single person draw for a duck blind is not, we talk about safety and stuff, but duck hunting is a party thing. Everybody's going to try to get it. One person can get sick. One person can break it down. If they have a card and they're the only ones, you can't go there. And if they're not hoppable, nobody gets to use them. But at least this way, there's 3 more chances somebody gets to use that blind. That is my amendment.
I'll
All right,
second
hold
that.
on,
I'll
hold on,
second that
hold on
motion.
a second. Hold on 1 second. Let me make sure I understand the motion. You would amend the computer draw system such that it would be required for a minimum of 4 in order to draw a blind and a maximum of 8. Is that correct?
Correct.
Hold on just a second. Deputy Maxidon, did you hear what I just said? Do you understand the motion that's before the?
Mr. Chairman, I apologize. I was talking
okay.
back here with a gentleman in the audience, but restate that for me, please.
Okay. It's my understanding that the motion would state that the rule would be amended such that there would be a minimum of 4 that would have to draw for a blind and a maximum of 8. This would prevent one single individual from being drawn for that blind.
Yes, sir.
Have I correctly stated that?
Well, it'll give an opportunity for the blind to be used by more than one person. His buddies, if something happens to
Right.
them, it'll create opportunity.
I understand that's the intent of it, but I just want to make sure I've stated the amendment. All right. Did I have a second? Second by Commissioner Granberry. All right. Any discussion?
Sorry. For clarity, if they put in as a party of 4, and will they have 4 chances at their draw? And if so the more you put in for your party, the more chances you get. Is that right? Is that how everybody? So if you put in as 8, you got twice as many.
That's
Okay.
correct.
The second observation, I think this is a good idea because 84% of the people are applying as a group in tier 1s anyway. And it encourages people to apply as a group. So we got multiple card holders. If somebody's on duty, a fireman, as he mentioned, and we already saw in the Creel studies that tier 1s were more likely to be unoccupied. And maybe this solves some of that problem. We get them occupied. So thank you.
Okay. We have a motion by Commissioner Childers, a second by Commissioner Granberry to amend the rule such that the minimum number of applicants for the blind would be 4, the maximum would be 8. Is there any more comment?
I just wanted to follow up with Commissioner Wright's comment. 90% of the comments I got in my district, which is Middle Tennessee, were COVID. I couldn't get in the blind and the blind went empty. I think Wally's motion and observation, hopefully solves. It's not going to be perfect. Nothing's perfect, but it solves that problem that, if I can't go, at least Hank or, Monty can go and then the blind's occupied. Tier 1, tier 2, it doesn't matter. I think it solves the problem. I think it's a really, really good solution.
All right. Other comment on the amendment? All right. Hearing none. Okay. Yes, sir.
I understand that maybe for tier 1, tier 2, you award priority points. And if you do that, like I was unsuccessful for a number of years during the middle season, and any priority point that I had carried over for the middle season. So I'm now at 4 priority points. If I bring anybody else in, that waters down my chances. And that's the purpose of getting priority points, where that you can have a better chance at being selected. So yeah, maybe for tier 1, make it where it's 4 people to 8 people. But I don't think for the tier 2s, you're going to have people, if somebody gets selected for a tier 2 blind, he's not going to take just one person. I mean, he's going to have a bunch of people with him. So that's my concern.
Thank you, Mr. Carrier. Okay. Yes, sir.
We took the 42 better blinds, and when only one person can get drawed and nobody else can get in it, we've eliminated problems. We're adjusting. This is a 1-year deal. I don't know that much about priority points, but for the greater good, 4 other people need to have a chance to hunt, or 3 others if you can't make it. So that's why it is. It's not to keep one person to get it. It's to make sure it gets utilized and gets hunted. So I just want to make sure we're not trying to eliminate one. We're trying to make it better for everybody to get a chance. Because you might have a buddy that wants to carry you. Well, his buddies can't go. So you still have a chance. And that's what it is. It's not to keep one person from getting it. It's to make sure the blind gets hunted. Thank you.
Other comments?
Yeah, did you say you had 4 points? All right, we need to address that. We got a point system, and these men have stacked up points. And if we're taking them away from them, that's not right. We need to address that and see. It might can be addressed, but I mean, I support this, but we just don't need to tell them their points are no good anymore.
All right. Hold up. Susie Spriggs, you're recognized. to
Thank-
address the issue of the preference points.
Thank you, Chairman. So to Mr. Carrier's point, anyone that had priority points in the previous drawings, Pagoda, Thorny Chick, all of those, we moved all of those to the mid-segment. And to Mr. Carrier's point, if he puts in with the amendment that has been posed, if he has 3 other people with him that did not put in, we would average those points. So instead of having 4 priority points going into the draw, Mr. Carrier could very well go into the draw with 2, and that would lessen his chances.
Is that automatic or can that average be changed?
That average was a request of the public, sir, if memory serves me correctly. Averaging was a request of the public.
Deputy Richardson.
So the mid-season is the only place right now where anybody has more than 1 point, because early season and late season has just been established this year. I certainly can understand the concern and the building of the priority points. There's other options here that certainly we can discuss, knowing the will of the commission. Averaging is where we stated we would be as we put this in. That's what we do on other hunts where we have priority. But this is somewhat unique in that there were priority points that carried forward that have been built over time. So that middle segment of the draw, it is a valid point that Mr. Carrier raises on how those would be treated.
And that can be addressed without the rule, outside the rule.
Correct. The language that's currently in the rule says that the priority drawings and procedures for qualifying with priority status will be established by the TWRA.
So you have the capability to adjust that?
We do.
Okay. Yes.
Could we not give the highest points of that group? If he's got 4 points, could we not make everybody in that group have 4 points for that draw?
Again, that's a matter that the agency could address. Is that correct, Mr. Richardson?
It is, but this is an appropriate place for direction. You know, certainly a circumstance like Commissioner McLaren just proposed is possible. If that's the will of the commission, if there is a decision on how you would like us to address it, or you'd like to have that, otherwise we will address it at the best way we know how.
Yes.
What if we added clarification to the motion that states that all priority points that exist would be in place, and that going forward, then that would be the case as they accumulate priority points? Would that satisfy the concern?
I think, Commissioner Butt, that the concern is if we put a minimum party size of 4, anyone with existing priority points is going to have to add people that potentially don't have priority points. And the way we have handled those situations is we would take the average priority points of the group. So if I have 4 and nobody else has any, we would average that, and everyone in that group would have 1 point. We are taking someone's advantage away that has 4 priority points that would want to put in as an individual and have that priority status with 4 points.
Yeah.
As I said here, thinking off the cuff, I think Commissioner McLaren's suggested approach with adding this minimum party size is the first one that comes to mind. Is you give everyone in that group, you attribute the highest priority point number of the group to all of them.
But we don't reach that issue until we vote on this issue of minimum and maximum.
That's correct.
And so at this point, are there any more comments with regard to the amendment as it stands? Minimum of 4, maximum of 8. Seeing none, all in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The amendment carries. The rule, as recommended by the agency, is amended such that the minimum number of applicants shall be 4, the maximum shall be 8. We are now dealing with that rule as amended. Are there any further amendments offered? May I ask a question? Yes, sir.
Who now is, it's been amended?
The language of the rule is flexible enough for us to establish those procedures, but this would be the appropriate place for the commission to give direction if they so desired on how we would handle those situations where we now have a minimum party size and how we handle priority points in those situations.
Other comments?
Where are we as far as existing priority points in relation to the rule that's changed?
Chief
Is that eliminate, does that automatically go to an averaging?
Clarify that for me if you would, Commissioner.
Well, in the case of Mr. Carrier, and he has 5 priority points, or Brad, if this rule goes into effect, then the averaging takes place. Is that my understanding?
As it stands right now, yes, sir.
So it eliminates his accumulation of priority points.
Unless he puts everybody in his party that has the same amount of priority points, yes, sir.
Okay, but we've determined that we can handle this outside of this rule.
Correct.
So we
It's
need to
agency
pass the
policy.
rule and direct the agency to see to it that these gentlemen don't lose their priority points, and discuss it perhaps with the commission with a recommendation of how we do that. But we don't need to do that right now.
Thank you, Commissioner Cox. Other comments from commissioners? Okay. Now, are there other amendments offered to the rule? Now, I remind you, it's the rule is recommended by the agency as amended to make applicants a minimum of 4, maximum of 8. That's what's before us now. I entertain any motions for amendments to the rule as it's now stated. Be quiet.
Hey, we just voted on the amendment, didn't we? Did we vote on the rule? Yeah, but we got to vote on
Now
the
we're
rule.
voting on the rule, but someone can move to amend the rule now before we pull the
And if
trigger.
there's no more amendments, then we.
All right, I'm not hearing any motions or discussions of further amendments, and don't really want to. No, I'm kidding. All right. So we are now voting on the rule, which is the recommended rule, the agency rule as amended, so there's a minimum of 4 applicants and a maximum of 8. All in favor of the rule as amended signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The rule passes as amended. Okay, that was brutal. No, not really. Okay, let's see. Back to the agenda. At this point, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I just want to say I'm glad that's over. And I hope that we can spend maybe not that much time, but I'd like to invest some time this year on providing habitat or rest or what we can for the ducks and help increase our flyway, because without that, all this, I'd like to focus on that this year. So it's important to me that we can do that. So I hope we have completed the duck blind for this time.
All right, I appreciate.
Thank y'all for the hard work too. I know
all-
this is a lot on the staff. Thank y'all.
Yes, absolutely. And I appreciate all the commissioners being willing to entertain all these comments from the folks that came. We are open to comments. We hope those comments are responsible. Some comments from duck hunters that were directed to some of us were not responsible. And that doesn't do anybody any good, because I'll say again, we're here trying to do the right thing. To a man and woman, we are trying to do the right thing by the people of the state of Tennessee. So thank you for being here. I'll recognize Stephanie Carnes, Wildlife and Forestry Assistant Chief, with regard to budget expansion.
Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you, Commissioners. This is a request for a budget expansion to receive a grant from the Wild Turkey Federation for $69,000 to complete 5 different habitat management projects across the state, 4 on WMAs, and then the 5th project is a statewide support for multiple projects.
All right, thank you. Was this addressed yesterday?
It was, Mr. Chairman. The Budget Committee met and recommended, and I move approval of budget expansion for $69,000 to accept this money.
Second. I have a second. All in favor of the budget expansion for year 22, receiving funds $69,000 from National Wild Turkey Federation, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you very much.
All right. We have one item left, and it's a bittersweet moment for me. I have thoroughly enjoyed being the chairman of this commission, and I'm going to miss it a great deal, but it's time for us to have nominations for our officers going forward. And at this time, I'm going to recognize Wally Childress and ask Wally to report the recommendations of the nominating committee.
Thank you, Chairman Ripley. Me and Kent Woods and Chris Devaney were all on the nominating committee. We unanimously picked the people that we thought deserved it the most. And it's honored to announce Ms. Angie Box as the chairman. Tommy Woods is the vice chair. Jimmy Granberry is the secretary, and that's our nomination.
Second.
All right. I have a nomination that Angie Box moved to chairman. Tommy Woods would move to vice chairman. Jimmy Granberry would become our secretary. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I call for the vote. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Congratulations. I want to say I have absolute confidence in Angie. She's going to do a great job. And I'm delighted that you made that recommendation, Commissioner. Well, I think you've chosen wisely. And so I just wish you the very best going forward. And finding myself a little emotional now, I'm going to adjourn this meeting. I guess this is all the business we have. Wait a second.
Oh,
Staff's waving at me. What? You're overruling the nominating committee and leaving me in? Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to recognize Joe Benedict and all the Wildlife Division too for the excellent work they did. And Joe up there today and all he had to remember and go through and explain. There's a lot as y'all had to absorb. You can imagine what he had to go through to try to explain all that. So kudos to Joe
Yes,
Benedict
indeed.
especially.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Hey, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
good job to you as well for being the chairman, not just today, but for the past year. We all appreciate your leadership.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Joe, did you have something you wanted to say?
I appreciate the recognition. It's emotional for me. Excuse me. It's my staff that allowed me to give the presentation. So thank you for the accolades, but it's all for my staff. So thank you, Wildlife Division.
I want to say thank you to the agency in general. Very, very hardworking group of people. This has been a trying year in many ways. But you all have, my dad used to say cream floats and it's floated. And we have a great agency and we have a lot to be proud of. I'm going to adjourn the meeting and then I'm going to pass this. I guess I'm not.
No, not yet. You're not.
Okay, go ahead.
I would like to thank you for the job you did this year. We've had some rough patches and your leadership and your lawyerly presentation, judgely presentation that you have. You handled it with dignity and grace and great leadership, and you did an outstanding job, and I appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I also think we've got a good leadership committee coming. Congratulations, Jimmy's well deserved, all three of them. So hopefully we won't have anything as confrontational as we've had this past year. We'll have a smooth year.
And I like that comment so much. If there are any others, I'll hear them.
There are some others.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you so much for your leadership this year. You've been incredible. And it's going to be hard to follow in the footsteps of you. You've done a great job. And
Thank you.
I appreciate the confidence that y'all have given me in leadership. And it's going to be great. It's just not one. It's all of us as a group. And we speak as one voice. So I'm looking forward to this year with y'all. I got a great team. Thank you,
Great.
sir.
All right, here we go. I'm going to hit it and pass it. We're adjourned.